on the YouTube thing as well. We're going to try and make it through an entire session of something on YouTube, restreaming out to YouTube without having a copyright strike or a claim. It's crazy. It's crazy. I went to great pains yesterday to have no Aero playing. I had no Forza Horizon 4 playing. And of course, like no, copyright tunes on like any of my inter scenes or what have you, or sound effects. And my live stream yesterday while playing Paladins had a notification come up and say, and they detected copyrighted music, and that was enough of that, and they shut off the stream. Just automatically. The automated system up there is terrible. Anyway, so I don't want to lose my channel again, so goodbye YouTube gaming, I guess. Because I don't have any other options, yeah. Alrighty. Sleeper Cylon knows all about it, huh? Alrighty. Yeah, it's. I mean, and I do understand, and I certainly, understand and empathize with, people, artists do deserve to get paid, but there's this big weird hole, when it comes to like streaming video games on a platform which has specifically made for, in theory, streaming games on, and and there's, you would think they would have that all sorted out, but no. Alrighty. So okay. I'll stick to restreaming story, book club up there, and that's that. That's okay. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So today is Short Story Sunday. We're going to have a good time with it today. Just a reminder, this is what we're reading on Monday through Thursday. Whose Body by Dorothy L. Sayers. The first of the Lord Peter Wimsey mystery novels, murder mysteries. It's been pretty good so far. It's been pretty good. It's definitely a satirical take, more of a satirical take on like the Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie novels of the time. But today's just short stories. So we've got two of them. We're going to start off with one by Victor Rousseau from Astounding Stories of Super Science, which would be pretty good, I think. And we would probably have to break that into 4 parts. But that's fine. So that way we can read a good chunk of that, and then still get some other stuff in as well. Have a good time with that. And there we go. And then once we're done with book club, we're going to take a little break and then come back at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for movie night. Tonight being My Favorite Brunette by with Bob Hope, and I forgot the name of the other star. But yeah, it's supposed to be pretty good. It's supposed to be pretty funny, and then we're going to get some light gaming going on after that, so it should be good. But do we have any other news, anything to share? I hope everyone's taking all kinds of precautions and the like this week. Going into next week, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Yeah, it's going to be an ugly week out there. So yeah, just make sure you're doing your part there. Obviously, washing their mitts as often as you can, and just really if you're gonna, you just need to do your part and try and stay out of harm's way best you can. Let the deliveries come to you if you're in a place where that kind of thing is possible. And boy, oh boy, it's got to peak sometime. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Alrighty. Let's see. Anyone else have anything exciting? Rose is in her 4th week lockdown there. Yeah, mine's probably been going longer than that. Passion Week next week. Yeah, there's some churches still doing their things. It blows my mind. I was reading about like one pastor over in France. He has like a big congregation. He's begging for like for forgiveness. Yeah, and he has had 2,500 of his parishioners come down with the coronavirus, and 17 have died. And he's just like, well, oops. And I'm like, well, yeah. And right here, obviously, in the States, we got, yeah, there are similarly unsafe things there. I've actually been helping some places to get online and do their thing, which is the best for all. And luckily, it's very simple to help them get set up with that nowadays. Very simple. I mean, for most of these people, they have their like computers all already set up to do it. They just don't know. So yeah, I've been lucky to have the opportunity to help out some people with that. Chris Alberti says even your young adults group is on Facebook Live every Sunday night. So, okay, well there we go. They're smart. See, young people do know something. Maybe the young uns do know a little something after all. I don't know though. Civil rights and conspiracy theories running wild. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's that's really unfortunate. Yeah, all these like rumors about 5G wireless networks, and there's that one dude here in Los Angeles who he was a train engineer. Thought that the hospital ship coming in was part of like a big government takeover, so he raced right towards it, jumped the tracks, and trying to ram into the side of it. There didn't make it, but I mean, but that train ain't gonna be driving again. Man, crazy people. Hey, SoCal Aussie, what's going on? What is going on? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's we just have to do our part, really. And I mean, seriously, if my part involves staying at home and playing video games, I mean, that's my cross to bear, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Oh, there's Lady Death. There we do have a Lady Death right there. Hey, so, yeah. What is up? Alrighty. Yeah, well, yeah, I've definitely been streaming a lot more than I should have. Still, it'd be nice to be getting some actual real work in there as well. The very small amount of VO stuff going on right now. All of a sudden, all of the actors who were too good to do voice work, suddenly it's all they can do, and so they've all piled on in there trying, and then it's just a mess. All right, but it's, what, see, 12 past. We should be just about ready to start. New cell towers are going to help alleviate web congestion, and people in areas are going, some are burnt. Yeah, I've been reading about that. Yeah, there's all the 5G rumors and crazy stuff. Yeah. All righty. So, but anyway, in a lot of ways, I mean, I gotta say, I think this stream here, well, especially here on Mixer, yeah, I think it has been seeing additional people coming in to to listen into something, to tune into something, to take their mind off of things while they're cooped up at home, either stay home from work, or school being out, or what have you. So yeah, we're going to keep doing this, maybe a little longer on each day. Just it's a nice. I think it's a nice and entertaining distraction, and it's certainly a different, much less frenetic than non-stop gaming all the time as well. Lady Death is a pro at staying at home. Been working that for a while. It's Rose Morales Zen time. Nice. MC. Maybe it is MC Glenn. Wow, okay, they hooked me up with a retweet. Yeah, I like that. Well, which reminds me, if you are watching this stream here on Mixer, well, first of all, thank you very much. Two, yeah, you probably see next to your follow unfollow button a little notification bell. and I think it's off by default, but it's very visible now, so you can make sure that you get my notifications for when I go on live by having that on the in the right position there. Yeah, so that would help out a lot. And also, right next to that, there should be the share stream button. So yeah, if you want to share that with your Facebook friends, if you want to share it with your Twitter friends, I encourage you to do that. Then maybe bring in some of your friends maybe who need a little distraction, a little time to get away from things. Let me just pop out YouTube chat. Okay, I won't be streaming our public domain movie or gaming later tonight over there, but may as well keep it here for story time. We got a good one today. We got a very good one today. Also, if you're watching on Periscope, I started up the whole Periscope thing again. I don't believe I can see your chat, but we're over here at mixer.com/CarringtonTV. If you're interested in swinging by, saying hi, whatever that is. And yeah, but anyway, let's do it. Let's get on with it. Let us get on with it. Here is the main book screen, which I've temporarily turned into a come on back. Here's my book. I got my book. I think we're in business. Okay, yeah, so we're starting, I believe this is the very first issue of Astounding Stories of Super Science, January 1930. Amazing stories of super science. Science. Lady Death has got a lightsaber out over on Twitch. Yeah, all right, you could do a lot of damage with one of those over there. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So currently, okay. Main channel here on Mixer. Come join us here. But yeah, until this whole thing blows over, until the whole Rona business is behind us, yeah, I'll be restreaming over to Twitch and YouTube and Periscope and anything which I can get to work in a very simple fashion there, just in case this can help you take your mind off of things. There we go. Oh wow, that was huge. That shows up huge in the restream chat window there. Very interesting. Okay, so in this one here, this Astounding Stories of Super Science, January 1930, in the public domain. Yes. You can get your own free copy from Gutenberg.org, by the way. The Beetle Horde by Victor Rousseau. Look at that. It looks exciting. You got some like cave woman kind of looking thing on the left there, cowering in fear, as what kind of looks like a pilot, maybe. It looks like he's like wearing pilot garb and tennis sneakers and an airman's hat, maybe, and having a punching fight. He's a bit of a pugilist with some giant carapaced beetle on a foreign-looking planet. And there's some dude in the background running into the rescue. I just noticed him for the first time. So, yeah, I think this is going to be pretty awesome. What? Oh, hey there, Expert Jaguar. What is up? What they say? Where am I from? I'm from Mixer, mixer.com/CarringtonTV. But if you mean where am I from in real life, well, I travel around a lot, so I have a very confused accent. The spider population could eat the entire human population within a year. What? I mean, if the people couldn't fight back, maybe. If there were no humans around to keep the spiders' population down, yeah, I wouldn't trust spiders. Yeah. Boy, that's that. Yeah, I'm certainly not going to. I mean, which spider scientists did they talk to? Anyway, so here we go. The Beetle Horde. It says it's a 2-part novel because like the first 6 sections are in this, and the second 6 sections are in the magazine which came the next month. But we're just going to start with the beginning here. But first of all, I just love reading through the guarantee from William Clayton. I love it. On sale the first Thursday of each month. Very nice. The Clayton Standard on a magazine guarantees that the stories therein are clean, interesting, vivid, led by by leading writers of the day and purchased under conditions approved by the Authors League of America. I like that. I don't think they're around anymore. It's probably the Writers Guild these days. That such magazines are manufactured in union shops by American workmen, and these days women. I like that, though. Union shops? Oh, yes, I do. That each news dealer and agent, that everyone who gets these magazines out is ensured a fair profit. Everyone benefits from selling these magazines. And that an intelligent censorship guards their advertising pages, so they don't take any old fake news riffraff advertising. You know, I don't know if the advertising are actually presented in these archived things. Anyway, I just like reading that a little bit because it's. I think we need a little more of that. Just saying. Hey, Legia Zone, what's going on? Yeah. No, that can't be right, Halo Collector. That can't be right. That's how much meat the spider population of Earth consumes. No, that can't be right. I don't know, man. I would need to see some sources or something for that, because I don't know. That sounds like a lot. Sounds like a lot. They are honorable, very honorable publishers there, Mr. Quinn. Good to see you, sir. Let's do it. Let's get into our thing. The two-part novel. Like I said, we're breaking these in half ourselves, so. Okay, my mic is back. Okay, good. That was okay. I was just adjusting my chair and I pulled the cable out. That was not clever. All right. So I was just saying thank you for all those hosts. That I was saying. That is what I was saying. And yeah, if you still need to do one, feel free. Don't need to wait on my permission to do so. Let's do it. The Beetle Horde by Victor Rousseau. Look at that. Dodd and Tommy realized that they were powerless against the monstrous beetles. That's terrible. It's terrible. Look at them. They're huge. I'd run away. Alrighty. There we go. Chapter 1. Dodd's Discovery. Only two young explorers stand in the way of the mad Brahm's horrible revenge. The releasing of his trillions of man-sized beetles upon an utterly defenseless world. Who is the Mad Brahm? Have we read him in previous stories? I don't know. Out of the south, the biplane came winging back toward the camp, a black speck against the dazzling white of the vast ice fields that extended unbroken to the horizon on every side. It came out of the south, and yet 100 miles further back along the course on which it flew, it could not have proceeded in any direction except northward. For 100 miles south lay the South Pole, the goal toward which the Travers expeditions had been pressing for the better part of that year. Not that they could not have reached it sooner. As a matter of fact, the pole had been crossed and recrossed, according to the estimate of Tommy Travers, aviator, and nephew of the old millionaire, who stood fairy uncle to the expedition. But one of the things that was being sought was the exact site of the pole, not within a couple of miles or so, but within the fraction of an inch. Okay, there's a source in Washington Post, all right. Spiders could theoretically eat every human on Earth in 1 year. Yeah, you know, I value my sleep at night time, so I think I will refrain from clicking that link. I will accept it at face value. It had something to do with Einstein, and something to do with terrestrial magnetism, and the variations of the south magnetic pole, and the reason therefore, and something to do with parallaxes, and the precession of the equinoxes, and other things. This search for the pole's exact location. But all that was principally the affair of the astronomer of the party. Tommy Travers, who was now evidently on his way back, didn't give a whoop for Einstein or any of the rest of the stuff. He had been enjoying himself after his fashion during a year of frostbites and hard rations, and he was beginning to anticipate the delights of the return to Broadway. Captain Storm, in charge of the expedition, together with the 5 others of the advance camp, watched the plane maneuver up to the tents. She came down neatly on the smooth snow, skidded on her runners like an expert skater, and came to a stop almost immediately in front of the marquee. No, it's a, there's a, for links, there is a, the Catbot is on a curve. So the more that Catbot trusts you, the more likely it is for a link to go through. So, new people at the channel, no. But once Catbot gets to know you, it's maybe. It's a maybe. It's AI stuff. Tommy Travers leaped out of the enclosed cockpit, which, shut off by glass from the cabin, was something like the front seat of a limousine. "Well, Captain, we followed that break for 100 miles, and there's no ground cleft, as you expected," he said. "But Jim Dodd and I picked up something, and Jim seems to have gone crazy." Through the windows of the cabin, Jim Dodd, the young archaeologist of the party, could be seen apparently wrestling with something that looked like a suit of armor. By the time Captain Storm, Jimmy, and other members of the party had reached the cabin door, Dodd had got it open and flung himself out backward, still hugging what he had found, and maneuvering so that he managed to fall on his back and sustain its weight. "Say, what's that?" gasped Storm. Even the least scientific-minded of the party gasped in amazement at what Dodd had. It resembled nothing so much as an enormous beetle. As a matter of fact, it was an insect, for it had the 3 sections that characterize this class, but it was merely the shell of one. Between 4 and 5 feet in height, when Dodd stood it on end, it could now be seen to consist of the hard exterior substance of some huge, unknown coleopter. Coleopter is not in the dictionary. This substance, which was fully 3 inches thick over the thorax, looked as hard as plate armor. "What is it?" gasped Storm again. Tommy Travers made answer, for James Dodd was evidently incapable of speech, more from emotion than from the force with which he had landed backward in the snow. "We found it at the pole, Captain," he said. "At least pretty near where the pole ought to be. We ran into a current of warm air or something. The snow had melted in places, and there were patches of bare rock. This thing was lying in a hollow among them." "If I didn't see it before my eyes, I'd think you were crazy, Tommy," said Storm with some asperity. "What is it? A crab?" "A crab be damned," shouted Jim Dodd, suddenly recovering his faculties. "My God, Captain Storm, don't you know the difference between an insect and a crustacean? This is a fossil beetle. Don't you see the distinguishing mark of the Coleoptera, those 2 elytra, or wing covers, which meet in the median dorsal line? A beetle, but with the shell of a crustacean instead of mere chitin. That's what led you astray, I expect. God, what a tale we'll have to tell when we get back to New York. We'll drop everything else and spend years, if need be, looking for other specimens." "Like fun you will," shouted Higby, the astronomer of the party. "Let me tell you right here, Dodd, nobody outside the Museum of Natural History is going to care a damn about your old fossils. What we're going to do is march straight to the true pole and spend a year taking observations and parallaxes. If Einstein's brochure, in which he links up gravitation with magnetism, is correct." "Fossil beetles?" Jim Dodd burst out, ignoring the astronomer. "That means that in the tertiary era, probably, there existed forms of life in the Antarctic continent that have never been found elsewhere. Imagine a world in which the insect reached a size proportionate to the great saurians, Captain Storm. I'll wager poor Bram discovered this. That's why he stayed behind when the Greystoke expedition came within 100 miles of the pole. I'll wager he's left a cairn somewhere with full details inside it. We've got to find it. But Jim Dodd, suddenly realizing that the rest of the party could hardly be said to share his enthusiasm in any marked degree, broke off and looked sulky. "You say you found this thing pretty nearly upon the site of the true pole?" Captain Storm asked Tommy. "Within 5 miles, I'd say, Captain. The fog was so bad that we couldn't get our directions very well." "Well, then, there's going to be no difficulty," answered Storm. "If this fair weather—" What?
RGONE killed evil sent 100 embers with the message, shooting star.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Orgon. Mr. Orgon. Shooting, so we're all stars here. We're all stars. It's a nice little stack of embers, though. Thank you. It was good to play with you last night, too. Yeah, getting you in the Halo 5 there. Been meaning to get you in there a while. We'll be doing it again tomorrow, by the way. Halo 5's tomorrow night. Blah, blah, blah. "Well, then, there's going to be no difficulty," answered Storm. "If this fair weather lasts, we'll be at the pole in another week, and we'll start making our permanent camp. Plenty of opportunity for all you gentlemen. As for me, I'm merely a sailor, and I'm trying to be impartial. And please remember, gentlemen, that we're well into March now, and likely to have the first storms of autumn on us any day. So let's drop the argument and remember that we've got to pull together." Tommy Travers was the only skilled aviator of the expedition, which had brought 2 planes with it. It was a queer friendship that had sprung up between him and Jim Dodd. Good Lord.
Salt Bay, thanks for the fun times. Not much, but I can give here and there, so it adds up. Good games.
Yeah, well, thank you once again there, Orgon. And, I appreciate all the embers that come this way. And you're right, it does all add up. It does all add up. Thank you. Yeah. It's been a quite remarkable past 2 weeks, I gotta say. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, Tommy was the only skilled aviator of the expedition, which had brought 2 planes with it. It was a queer friendship that had sprung up between him and Jim Dodd. Tommy, the blasé ex-Harvard man, who was known along Broadway and had never been able to settle down, seemed as different as possible from the spectacled, scholarly Dodd, 10 years his senior, red-haired, irascible, and living, as Tommy put it, in the age of old red sandstone, instead of in the year 1930 A.D. It was generally known, though the story had been officially denied, that there had been trouble in the Greystoke expedition of 3 years before. Captain Greystoke had taken the brilliant, erratic Bram of the Carnegie Archaeological Institute with him, and Bram's history was a long record of trouble. It was Bram who had exploded the fake Neolithic finds at Mannheim, thereby earning the undying enmity of certain European savants, but brilliantly demolitioning them when he smashed the so-called Mannheim stone pitcher, valued at $100,000, with a pocket axe, and caustically inquired whether Neolithic man used Babbitt metal rivets to fasten on his jug handles. Bram's brilliant work in the investigation of the origin of the Negrito-Asiatic races had been awarded one of the Nobel Prizes, and Bram had declined it in an insulting letter because he disapproved of the year's prize award for literature. He had been a storm center for years, embittered by long opposition, when he joined the Greystoke expedition for the purpose of investigating the marine fauna of the Antarctic continent. And it was known that his presence had nearly brought the Greystoke expedition to the point of civil war. Rumor said he had been deliberately abandoned. His enemies hoped he had. The fact seemed to be, however, that in an outburst of temper he had walked out of camp in a furious snowstorm and perished. For days his body had been sought in vain. What's the zombie monster? Where? Is that, No, I'm looking there on the, I don't see him there on the screen. Oh, okay, alright, okay, I wasn't sure what you were talking about. Okay, no, I was looking at the stream avatars thing there. I was like, what? Didn't know they had one of those. Alright. Okay, the facts seem to be that Bram, however, in an outburst of temper, had just walked out of camp in a furious snowstorm and perished. For days his body had been sought in vain. Jimmy Dodd had run foul of Bram some years before, when Bram had published a criticism of one of Dodd's addresses dealing with fossil monotremes, or egg-laying mammals. In his inimitable way, Bram had suggested that the problem which came first, the egg or the chicken, was now seen to be linked up with the Darwinian theory, and solved in the person of Dodd. Nevertheless, Jimmy Dodd entertained a devoted admiration for the memory of the dead scientist. He believed that Bram must have left records of inestimable importance in a cairn before he died. He wanted to find out that cairn. And he knew, what a number of Bram's enemies knew, that the dead scientist had been a morphine addict. He believed that he had wandered out into the snow under the influence of the drug. Dodd, who shared a tent with Tommy, had raved the greater part of the night about the find. "Well, but see here, Jimmy, suppose these beetles did inhabit—" Oh, this is Tommy. "Well, but see here, Jimmy, suppose these beetles did inhabit the Antarctic continent a few million years ago. Why get excited?" Tommy had asked. "What? Who beat me at, Halo Collector beat me at Battle Royale? What? That thing's rigged. Supposed to be. Excited, bellowed Dodd. It opens on one of the biggest problems that science has to face. Why haven't they survived into historic times? Why didn't they cross into Australia, like the opossum, by the land bridge then existent between that continent and South America? Beetles 5 feet in length and practically invulnerable. What killed them off? Why didn't they win the supremacy over man?" Jimmy Dodd had muttered till he went to sleep, and he had muttered worse in his dreams. Tommy was glad that Captain Storm had given them permission to return to the same spot next morning and look for further fossils, though his own interest in them was of the slightest. The dogs were being harnessed the next morning when the two men hopped into the plane. The thermometer was unusually high for the season, for in the south polar regions the short summer is usually at an end by March. Tommy was sweating in his furs in a temperature well above the freezing point. The snow was crusted hard, the sky overcast with clouds, and a wind was blowing hard out of the south and increasing in velocity hourly. "A bad day for starting," said Captain Storm. "Looks like one of the autumn storms was blowing up. If I were you, I'd watch that weather, Tommy." Sound advice. Sound advice. Let me just, I need to change a setting here or there. Gonna bump that down. Just double, okay, I did hit the go button there. Alright. Yeah, okay. Tommy glanced at Dodd, who was huddled in the rear cockpit, fuming at the delay, and whistled. Blah, good Lord! Stumbling over all kinds of stuff. Tommy glanced at Dodd, who was huddled in the rear cockpit, fuming at the delay, and grinned whimsically. "I guess we can handle her, Captain," he answered. "It's only an hour's flight to where he found that fossil." "Just as you please," said Storm curtly. He knew that Tommy's judgment as a pilot could always be relied upon. "You'll find us here when you return," he added. I've countermanded the orders to march. I don't like the look of the weather at all." Tommy grinned again and pressed the starter. The engine caught and warmed up. One of the men kicked away the blocks of ice that had been placed under the skids to serve as chocks. The plane taxied over the crusted snow and took off into the south. Oh, there is indeed a movie tonight. Hey, Tillable Cat. What is up, Tillable Cat? Yes, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. My Favorite Brunette by with Bob Hope and what's her face. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty good. It's gonna be pretty good, I think. Pretty good. All right. You got popcorn? I'm out. I am out of microwave popcorn. It's just not worth running to the store to get it. Or having it delivered. I mean, that's the new going to the store. All right. The camp was situated in a hollow among the ice mountains that rose to a height of 2,000 or 3,000 feet all around. Tommy had not dreamed how strongly the gale was blowing until he was over the top of them. Then he realized that he was facing a tougher proposition than he had calculated on. The storm struck the biplane with full force. A snowstorm was driving up rapidly, blackening the sky. The sun, which only appeared for a brief interval every day, was practically touching the horizon as it rose to make its minute arc in the sky. A star was visible through a rift in the clouds overhead, and the pale daylight in which they had started had already become twilight. Tommy was tempted to turn back, but it was only 100 miles, and Jimmy Dodd would have given him no peace if he did so. So he put the plane's nose resolutely into the wind, watching his speed indicator drop from 100 miles per hour to 80, 60, 40, less. The storm was beating up furiously. Of a sudden, the clouds broke into a deluge of whirling snow. In a moment, the windshield was a frozen, opaque mass. Tommy opened it and peered out into the biting air. He could see nothing. The plane, caught in the fearful cross-currents that swirl about the southern roof of the world, was fluttering like a leaf in the wind. The altimeter was dropping dangerously. Tommy opened the throttle to the limit, zooming, and like a spurred horse, the biplane shot forward and upward. She touched 5,000, 6, 7, and that for her was ceiling under those conditions, for a sudden tremendous shock of wind, coming in a fierce cross-current, swung her round, tossed her to and fro in the enveloping white cloud. And Tommy knew that he had the fight of his life upon his hands. The compasses, which required considerable daily adjusting to be of use so near to the pole, had now gone out of use altogether. The airspeed indicator had apparently gone west, for it was oscillating between 0 and 20. The turn and bank indicator was performing a kind of tango round the dial. Even the 8-day clock had ceased to function, but that might have been due to the fact that Tommy had neglected to wind it. And the oil pressure gauge presented a still more startling sight, for a glance showed that either there was a leak, or else the oil had frozen. Tommy looked around at Dodd and pointed downward. Dodd responded with a vicious forward wave of his hand. Tommy shook his head, and Dodd started forward along the cabin, apparently with the intention of committing assault and battery upon him. Instead, the archaeologist collapsed upon the floor as the plane spun completely around under the impact of a blast that was like a giant slap. The plane was no longer controllable. True, she responded in some sort to the controls, but all Tommy was able to do was to keep her from going into a crazy sideslip or nosedive as he fought with the elements. And those elements were like a devil unchained. One moment he was dropping like a plummet, the next he was shooting up like a rocket as a vertical blast of air caught the plane and tossed her like a cork into the invisible heavens. Then she was revolving, as if in a maelstrom, and by degrees this rotary movement began to predominate. Round and round went the plane, in circles that gradually narrowed, and it was all Tommy could do to swing the stick so as to keep her from skidding or side-slipping. And as he worked desperately at his task, Tommy began to realize something that made him wonder if he was not dreaming. The snow was no longer snow, but rain. Mist, rather, warm mist that had already cleared the windshield and covered it with tiny drops. And that white, opaque world into which he was looking was no longer snow, but fog, the densest fog that Tommy had ever encountered. Fog like white wool, drifting past him in fleecy flakes that looked as if they had solid substance. Warm fog that was like balm upon his frozen skin, but of a warmth that was impossible within a few miles of the frozen pole. Then there came a momentary break in it, and Tommy looked down and uttered a cry of fear. Fear because he knew that he must be dreaming. Not more than 1,000 feet beneath them he saw patches of snow, and patches of green grass, the brightest and most verdant green that he had ever seen in his life. He turned round at a touch on his shoulder. Dodd was leaning over him, one hand pointing menacingly upward and onward. "You fool!" Tommy bellowed in his ear. "Do you think the South Pole lies over there? It's here. Yeah, don't you get it, Jimmy? Look down. This valley. God, Jimmy, the South Pole's a hole in the ground." And as he spoke, he remembered vaguely some crank who had once insisted that the two poles were hollow because— what was the fellow's reasoning? Tommy could not remember it. But there was no longer any doubt but that they were dropping into a hole, not more than a mile around, which explained why neither Scott nor Amundsen had found it when they approximated to the site of the pole. A hole, a warm hole, up which a current of warm air was rushing, forming the white mist that now gradually thinned as the plane descended. The plateau, with its covering of eternal snows, loomed in a white circle high overhead. Underneath was green grass now. Grass and trees. Yes, the South Pole. Indeed. It's got me thinking of that Winnie the Pooh story where Winnie the Pooh goes off to try and I think he was looking for, I think he was looking for the North Pole. No, maybe it was the South Pole. I forget, but he found it. It wasn't too far from his house either. I forget which pole Winnie the Pooh found. He seemed very, very pleased at being able to find it so conveniently. SoCal Izzy's lurking a bit. Okay, nice. Get back to our stories just as soon as we get a little coffee in our system here. Yeah, there we go. That's more like it. The fog was nearly gone. The plane responded to the controls again. Tommy pushed the stick downward and came round in a tight circle. And then something happened that he had not in the least expected. One moment he seemed to be traveling in a complete calm, a sort of clear funnel with a ring of swirling fog outside it. The next, he was dropping into a void. There was no air resistance. There seemed hardly any air, for he felt a choking in his throat and a tearing at his lungs as he strove to breathe. He heard a strangled cry from Dodd and saw that he was clutching with both hands at his throat and his face was turning purple. The controls went limp in Tommy's hands. The plane, gyrating more slowly, suddenly nosed down, hung for a moment in that void, and then plunged toward the green earth 200 feet below with appalling swiftness. Halo Collector's on a second cup of third. That's so much coffee. That is so much coffee. Tommy realized that a crash was inevitable. He threw his goggles up over his forehead, turned and waved to Dodd an ironic farewell. He saw the earth rush up at him. Then came the shattering crash. And then oblivion. There we go. Okay, one chapter in. One chapter in, and yeah, I guess that was a fairly reasonable length for a I guess it's a novella. I guess this is. Oh, Washington, indeed, home of Starbucks. Home of Starbucks. Is that other big chain from there as well? I forget the name of it. The something tea. I forget what it is. Hey, Snow Crab, what's going on? Oh, that's right. Beetles and humans, Chris. I think they're about to meet some giant clans of giant beetles. This is kind of like an Edgar Rice Burroughs, like the Hollow Earth thing, the Pellucidar. Yeah, just you find like a hole in the earth and it just goes all the way down. Oh, there's several up there? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the Starbucks is the only one I can think of off the top of my head, but I know there's some other big players as well. It's kind of weird how they all started in like the one state. Coffee, computers, and planes. Yeah. Although I think Texas has been stealing some of those plane jobs. Yeah. Alrighty. Chapter 2. Beetles and humans. Oh, by the way, am I doing story time next Sunday? Yes, I am, Tillable Cat. Is there... Oh, yes, it's Easter Sunday. It's Easter Sunday next week, isn't it? I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, I will be. Let me move my chair this way a little. Maybe that'll help. Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about I don't know. I mean, would there be a lot of people wanting an Easter kind of thing? An actual Easter theme? I had not thought about it. Because I keep that kind of it is, but this is the thing, I mean, like, I do a pretty good job of keeping politics and personally held religious beliefs and things like that off the stream. So I don't know. Yeah, but yes, but yeah. Then spring theme is very non-committal too. So I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Yeah, it's something I would generally not do just because of it's one of those things which is just I don't know. Chris just watched the Ten Commandments movie last night, the one with Charlton Heston. That's a really good one. Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, it's just especially too with politics. It's just the easiest way to avoid conflict, basically. It's just, let people go about, come here for a bit of escapism. We'll just get away from all of that for a bit. I don't know. We'll think about it. Well, there's misbehaving. Yeah. That was good. Okay, let's get, there we go. Got the old Mr. C's going on. All right. Let's okay, but in the meantime, let's get on with our story. But anyway, I'll think about that. I have not seen the Moses. Oh yes, hang on. Was that the one with giant rock monsters in it and stuff? No, that was Noah. No, I have not seen the Moses one. All right. Oh, have you been working on a short story there, Tillable Cat? Okay, we've got to get back to our story in the meantime. Chapter 2, Beetles and Humans. How long he had remained unconscious, Tommy had no means of determining. Of a sudden, he found himself lying on the ground beside the shattered plane with his eyes wide open. He stared at it and stared about him, without understanding where he was or what had happened to him. His first idea was that he had crashed on the golf links near Mitchell Field, Long Island, for all about him were stretches of verdant grass and small shrubby plants. Then when he remembered the expedition, he was convinced that he had been dreaming. What brought him to a saner view was the discovery that he was enveloped in furs which were insufferably hot. He half raised himself and succeeded in unfastening his fur coat, and thus discovered that apparently none of his bones was broken. But the plane must have fallen from a considerable height to have been smashed so badly. Then Tommy discovered that he was lying upon an extensive mound of sand, thrown up as by some gigantic mole, for burrow tracks ran through it in every direction. It was this that had saved his life. Something was moving at his side. It was half submerged in the sand pile, and it was moving parallel to him with great rapidity. A grayish body, half covered with grains of sand, emerged, waving two enormously long tentacles. It was a shrimp, but fully 3 feet in length, and Tommy had never before had any idea what an unpleasant object a shrimp is. Tommy staggered to his feet and dropped nearer the plane, eyeing the shrimp with horror. But he was soon relieved as he discovered that it was apparently harmless. It slithered away and once more buried itself in the pile of sand. Now Tommy was beginning to remember. He looked into the wreckage of the plane. Jim Dodd was not there. He called his name repeatedly, and there was no response, except a dull echo from the ice mountains behind the veil of fog. He went to the other side of the plane. He scanned the ground all about him. Jimmy had disappeared. It was evident that he was nowhere near, for Tommy could see the whole of the lower scope of the bowl on every side of him. He had walked away, or he had been carried away. Tommy thought of the shrimp and shuddered. What other fearsome monsters might inhabit that extraordinary valley? He sat down, leaning against the wreck of the fuselage, and tried to adjust his mind, tried to keep himself from going mad. He knew that the flight had been no dream, that he was a member of his uncle's expedition, and that he had flown with Jim toward the pole, had crashed in a vacuum. But where was Jim, and how were they going to get out of the damn place? Something like a heap of stones not far away attracted Tommy's attention. Perhaps Jim Dodd was lying behind that. Once more Tommy got out upon his feet and began walking toward it. On the way he stumbled against the sharp edge of something that protruded from the ground. It cut his leg sharply, and with a curse he began rubbing his shin and looking at the thing. Then he saw it was another of the fossil shells, half buried in the marshy ooze on which he was treading. The ground in this lower part of the valley was a swamp, on account of the very fine mist falling from the fog clouds that surrounded it impenetrably on every side. Then Tommy came upon another shell, and then another, and now he saw that there were piles of what he had taken to be rock everywhere, and that this was not rock but great heaps of the shells, all equally intact. Hundreds of thousands of the prehistoric beetles must have died in that valley, perhaps overcome by some cataclysm. Tommy examined the heap near which he stood. He yelled Dodd's name, but again no answer came. Instead, something began to stir among the heaps of shells. For a moment, Tommy hoped against hope that it was Dodd, but it wasn't Dodd. It was a living beetle. A beetle fully 5 feet high as it stood erect, a pair of enormous wings outspread, and the head, which was larger than a man's, was the most frightful object Tommy had ever seen. Jim Dodd would have said at once that this was one of the Curculionidae. Jim Dodd would have said at once that this was one of the Curculionidae. Curculionidae, or snout beetles, for a prolongation of the head between the eyes formed a sort of beak a foot in length. The mouth, which opened downward, was armed with terrific mandibles, while the huge compound eyes looked like enormous crystals of cut glass. Immediately in front of the eyes were 2 mandibles as long as a man's arms, with feathery processes at the ends. In addition to these, there were 3 pairs of legs, the front pair as long as a man's, behind pair almost as long as a horse's. Paralyzed with horror, Tommy watched the monster, which had apparently been disturbed by the vibrations of his voice, extract itself from among the shells. Then, with a bound that covered 15 feet, it had lessened the distance between them by half. And then a still more amazing thing happened. For of a sudden the hard shell slipped from the thorax, the wing cases dropped off, the whole of the bony parts slipped to the ground with a clang, and a soft, defenseless thing went slithering away among the rocks. The beetle had molted. Tommy dropped to the ground in the throes of violent nausea. Then, looking up again, he saw the girl. She was about 100 yards away from him, very close to the fallen plane, and she must have emerged from a large hole in the ground, which Tommy could now see under a ledge of overhanging rock. She seemed to be dressed in a single garment which fell to her knees and appeared to fit tightly about her body, but as she came nearer, Tommy, watching her, petrified by this latest apparition, discovered that it was woven of her own hair, which must have been of immense length, for it fell naturally to her shoulders, and thence was woven into this close-fitting material, a fringe an inch or 2 in length, extending beneath the selvage. She was about 6 feet tall, and apparently made after the normal human pattern. She moved with a slow, majestic swing, and if ever any female had seemed to Tommy to have the appearance of an angel, this unknown woman did. She was so fair in that flossy flaxen covering, she moved with such easy grace, that Tommy, gaping, gradually crept nearer to her. She did not seem to see him. She was stooping over the very sand-heap into which he had fallen. Suddenly, with lightning-like rapidity, her arms shot out, her hands began tunneling in the sand. With a cry of triumph, she pulled out the shrimp Tommy had seen, or another like it, and, stripping it off the shell, began devouring it with evident relish. In the midst of her meal, the girl raised her head and looked at Tommy. He saw that her eyes were filmed, vacant, dead. Then, of a sudden, a third membrane was drawn back across the pupils, and she saw him. She let the shrimp drop to the ground, uttered a cry, and moved toward him with a tottering gait. She groped toward him with outstretched arms, and then she was blind again, for the membrane once more covered her pupils. It was as if her eyes were unable to endure even the dim light of the valley, through whose surrounding mists the low sun, setting just above the horizon, was unable to diffuse itself, save as a brightening of the fog curtain. "Good morning, Joey. What is up?" That's a good question there, Tillable Cat. That sounded quite nasty. It's like grabbing like a 3-foot-long raw shrimp, which is still wriggling, and just going to town on it. No, that's oh boy. Doesn't sound good. Yeah. I know. Terrible stuff. All right. But in we go. So we got Joey with us now. Joey, who's spending a little more time streaming that Fortnite. Oh yeah, I was going to say, do you play Paladins there, Joey? Joey and then the wonderful Mrs. there. You'd probably like that game if you've never played it before. It's very casual PvP. It's the same as Fortnite. Tommy stepped toward the girl. His outstretched hand touched hers. It was unquestionably a woman's hand he held, delicately warm, with exquisitely molded fingers, in whose touch there seemed to be, for the girl, some tactile impression of him. Again that membrane was drawn back from the girl's pupils for a fleeting flash. Tommy saw two eyes of intense black, their color contrasting curiously with the flaxen color of her hair and her white skin, almost the tint of an albino's. Those eyes had surveyed him, and appeared satisfied that he was one of her kind. She could not have seen very much in that almost instantaneous flash of vision. Queer, that membrane, as if she had been used to living in the dark, as if the full light of the day was unbearable. She drew her hand away. Soft vocals came from her lips. Suddenly she turned swiftly. She could not have seen, but before Tommy had seen, she had sensed the presence of the old man who was creeping out of the hole in the mountainside. He moved forward craftily, and then pounced upon the sand pile, and in a moment had pulled out another of the big shrimps, which he proceeded to devour with greedy relish. The girl, leaving Tommy's side, joined him in that unpleasant feast. And in the midst of it a flood came pouring from the hole, a flood of living beetles, covering the ground in 15-foot leaps as they dashed at the two. To his horror, Tommy saw Jimmy Dodd among them, wrapped in his fur coat like a mummy, and being pushed and rolled forward like a football. In the midst of it, a flood came, a flood of living beetles. Oh, okay, so he's all tucked up. Okay, the beetles have them. Okay. To his horror, Tommy saw Jimmy Dodd among them, wrapped in his fur coat like a mummy, and being pushed and rolled forward like a football. For a moment Tommy hesitated, torn between his solicitude for Jim Dodd and that for the girl. Then, as the foremost of the monsters bounded to her side, he ran between them. The vicious jaws snapped within 6 inches of Tommy's face, with a force that would have carried away an ear, or shredded the cheek, if they had met. Yeah, they certainly enjoy their raw shrimp. Tommy struck out with all his might, and his fist clanged on the resounding shell so that the blood spurted from his bruised knuckles. He had struck the monster squarely upon the thorax, and he had not discommoded it in the least. It turned on him, its glassy, many-faceted eyes glaring with a cold, infernal light. Tommy struck out again with his left hand, this time upon the pulpy flesh of the downward opening mouth. An inch higher, and he would have been impaled. He would have impaled his hand upon the beak with a point like a needle, and evidently used for purposes of attack, since it was not connected with the mandibles. The blow appeared to fall in the only vulnerable place. The monster dropped upon its back and lay there, unable to reverse itself, its antennae and forelegs waving in the air, and the rear legs rasping together in a shrill, strident shriek. Instantly, as Tommy darted out of the way, the swarm fell upon the helpless monster and began devouring it, tearing strips of flesh from the lower shell, which in the space of a half a minute was reduced, simply, to bone. The most horrible feature of this act of cannibalism was the complete silence with which it was performed, except for the rasping of the dying monster's legs. It was evident that the huge beetles had no vocal apparatus. For the moment, left unguarded, Jim Dodd flung down the collar of his fur coat, stared about him, and recognized Tommy. "My God, it's you!" he yelled. "Well, can you—" He had no time to finish his sentence. A pair of antennae went round his neck from behind. At the same instant, Tommy, the old man, and the girl were gripped by the monsters, which formed a solid phalanx about them. It began hustling them in the direction of the hole. Resistance was utterly impossible. Tommy felt as if he was being pushed along by a moving wall of stone. Inside the opening, it was completely dark. Tommy shouted to Dodd, but the strident sounds of the moving legs drowned his cries. He was being pushed forward into the unknown. "Good morning, Mr. Dentures. Good morning." "Yeah. How you doing?" "Yeah, we got a lot of story to go still. A lot of story." "Uh-huh." Suddenly the ground seemed to fall away beneath his feet. He struggled, cried out, and felt himself descending through the air. For a full half-minute he went downward at a speed that constricted his throat so that he could hardly draw breath. Then, just as he had nerved himself for the imminent crash, the speed of his descent was checked. In another moment he found that he was slowing to a standstill in mid-air. He was beginning to float backward, upward, but the wall of moving shells pushing against him forced him on, downward, and yet, apparently, against the force of gravitation. Then, of a sudden, Tommy was aware of a dim light all about him. His feet touched earth and grass as softly as thistledown alighting. He found himself seated in the same dim light upon red grass and staring into Jimmy's face. "Yeah. Some Starship Troopers, yeah." Such a great movie. Such a great movie. You like this jump? Yeah, it's pretty nice. I like it. It's a little chilly outside. It was overcast and raining and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. All right, we'll get back to our story in just a minute. Just a minute. I just need to check on something real fast here. Ba-da-ba-da-bum-bum. Let's see where we at. Just making sure that YouTube is not okay. They have not shut me off. Fantastic. Unlike yesterday. Good Lord. No one's watching now. That's fine. Where is my? Let's see. And refresh here. There we go. Get back to our story in just a minute. Got to give the old pipes a bit of a rest there for just a minute. So far so good. I mean, is it an okay story? We're going to get through one more chapter of this, and then we're going to switch over to a very cool story by a very cool author. To stream to like the Facebook page, you got to the restream. You have to pay them in order for that, like $20 a month. So no. Yeah, I've never really had much luck streaming to Facebook, by the way. Now, if they from time to time they do like a free trial or something. Yeah, I almost never use Facebook. Almost never use it. And I know that's probably your number one social media platform now. Yeah, it's just too much. It's too much. Yeah, I actually logged in there earlier today, actually, for like the first time in like a month. And just I took a look at some of the thing, but it's just so crammed with all kinds of things going on, and you're never quite sure if it's an ad or not. You had one of similar colors last years and years, kept you really yeah. This one's great. I've had this one a long time, maybe I picked this one up in Vermont, actually. Probably 30 years ago, maybe. Yeah, a long time ago. It's really nice. I like it. Maybe 25 years. Up in Vermont. Okay, let's get back to our story. Let's see. Chapter 3, 10 Miles Underground. What I was going to say when we were interrupted was, "Can you beat it?" Jimmy Dodd observed with admirable sang-froid. They were still seated on the red grass, gazing about them at what looked like an illimitable plain, and upward into the depths of darkness. It was warm, and the light, furnished by what appeared to be luminous vegetation, was about that of twilight. On every side were clumps of trees and shrubs, which formed centers of phosphorescent illumination, but for the most part the land was open, and here and there human figures appeared, moving with heads down and arms hanging earthward. "No, I'm damned if I can," said Tommy. "What happened to you after we crashed?" "Why, the first thing I knew, I found myself riding on the back of a fossil beetle, apparently one of the Curculionidae, said Dodd. "Never mind being so precise, Jimmy. Let's call it a beetle. Go on." "They set me down inside the hole and seemed to be investigating me, the whole swarm of them. Of course, I thought I was dead and come to my just reward, especially when I saw those beaks. Then one of them began tickling my face with its antenna, and I drew up my fur collar. They didn't seem to like the feel of the fur, and after a while the whole gang started hustling me back again, like a nest of ants carrying something they don't want, outside their hill. And then you bobbed up." "Well, my opinion is you saved your life by pulling up your collar," said Tommy. "Looks to me as if it's a case of the survival of the fittest, said fittest being the insect, and the human race taking second place. You know what the humans here live on, don't you?" "No, what?" "Shrimps as big as poodles. If you'd seen that girl and the old man getting outside them, you'd realize that there seems to be a food shortage in this part of the world. Say, where in thunder are we, Jimmy?" "Haven't you guessed yet, Travers?" asked Dodd, a spice of malice in his voice. "I suppose this is some sort of big hole on the site of the South Pole with warm vapors coming up. Maybe a great fissure in the earth or something." Jimmy Dodd's grin, seen in the half-light, was rather disconcerting. "How far do you think we dropped just now?" Dodd asked. "Why, I'd say several 100 yards," replied Tommy. "What's your estimate?" "Just about 10 miles, answered Dodd. "What? You're crazy. Why, we slowed up." "Yeah," grinned Dodd, "we slowed up. We're inside the crust of the world. That's the long and short of it. The earth we've known is just the shell over our heads." "Yeah? Walking head downward, are we? Then why don't we drop to the center of the earth, you damn fool?" "Because, my dear fellow, you can swing a pail full of water round your head without spilling any of it. In other words, our old friend, centrifugal force. The speed with which the earth is rotating keeps us on our feet, head downward. To be precise, the center of the earth's gravity lies in the middle of the hollow sphere, of course, but the counteraction of centrifugal force throws it outward to the middle of the 10-mile crust. That's why we slowed down after we were halfway through. We were moving against gravity." "And what's up there, or down there, or whatever you call it?" asked Tommy, pointing to what ought to have been the sky. "Nothing. It's the center of the tennis ball, though I imagine it's pretty near a vacuum when you get up a mile or so, owing to the speed of the Earth's rotation, which forces the heat into the shell." "You mean to say you actually believe that stuff you've been handing me?" asked Tommy after a pause. "Then how did humans get here, and those damn beetles, and why's the grass red?" The grass is red because there's no sunlight to produce chlorophyll. The inhabitants of the deep sea are red or black almost invariably. In the case of the humans, they've become bleached. My belief is that that man and woman we saw, and those," he pointed to the vague forms of human beings who moved across the grass, gathering something, "are survivors of the primitive race that still exists as the Australians. Undoubtedly, one of the branches of the human stock originated in Antarctica at a time when it enjoyed a tropical temperature and was the land bridge between Australia and South America." "And the Beatles?" asked Tommy. They go back to the days when nature was in a more grandiose mood," replied the archaeologist enthusiastically. "That's the most wonderful discovery of the ages. The world will go crazy over them when we bring back the first living specimens to the zoological parks of the great cities." "But," Dodd went on, speaking with still more enthusiasm, "of course, this is only the beginning, Tommy. There are 10 million species of insects, according to Riley, and it is inevitable that there must be hundreds of thousands of other survivals from the age of the great saurians, perhaps even some of the saurians themselves. Who knows but that we may discover the ancestor of the extinct monotremes, the rhynchocephalia, the pterodactyls, hatch a brood of Apornis eggs." "And," said Tommy tartly, "how are we going to get them back, apart from the little problem of getting out of here ourselves?" "Don't let's worry about that now," answered Dodd. "It will take 10 years of the hardest kind of labor to even begin a classification of the inhabitants of this inner world. I could sit down forever and—" But Jimmy Dodd rose to his feet as a pair of antennae whipped round his neck and jerked him bodily upward. "That's right, Rose, I am the king. But only here. Just regular Carrington elsewhere." One of the monster beetles was standing upright behind him, and by its gestures it evidently meant that Dodd and Tommy were to join the crowd of humans in the offing. As Dodd turned upon it with an indignant show of fists, one of the antennae whipped off his fur coat and stung him painfully with the bristle-like attachment at the end. The biker... Yeah, that's a fun sticker, that one. The biker jig. It was a painful moment when Dodd and Tommy realized that they were powerless against the monstrous beetles. Tommy tried the uppercut with which he had knocked out the deceased monster, but the quick jerks of the present beetle's head were infinitely faster than the movements of his fists, while the antennae had a whip-like quality about them that speedily convinced him that discretion was the card to play. Under the threat of the curling antenna, Tommy and Dodd moved in the direction of the slowly circulating humans. Numerous tiny rodents, which evidently kept the red grass short, scampered away under their feet. The beetles made no further attempt to force them on, but now they could see that a number of the monsters were stationed at intervals around a wide circle, keeping the humans in a single body. "Good Lord!" ejaculated Tommy, stopping. "See what they're doing, Dodd. They're herding us like cowboys herd steers. Look at that." One of the herd, a male with a long beard, suddenly broke from the herd, bawling, and flung himself upon a beetle guard. The antenna shot forth, coiled around his neck, and hurled him a dozen feet to the ground, where he lay stunned for a moment before arising and rejoining his companions. Tommy had not heard him. "Aha! I'm always the king. I like that." "But what are they looking for?" demanded Todd. Tommy had not heard him. He had stopped in front of one of the luminous trees and was plucking a fruit from it. "Jimmy, ever see an apple like this before?" he asked. "If this isn't an apple, I'll eat my head." It certainly was an apple, and one of the largest and juiciest that Tommy had ever tasted. It was the reddest apple he had ever seen, and would have won the first prize at any agricultural fair. And look at this," shouted Tommy, plucking an enormous luminous peach from another tree. They began munching slowly. Then, seeing one of the beetle guards approaching them, they moved into the midst of the crowd. "Did you notice anything strange about those fruit trees?" inquired Dodd as he munched. "I'll swear they were monocotyledonous, which, after all, is what one would expect. Still, to think that the monocotyledons evolved the familiar drupes or stone fruits on a parallel line to the dicotyledons is amazing. Good Lord, the scientific jargon they're throwing into this." A box on the ear, like the kick of a mule's hoof, jerked the last word from his lips as he went sprawling. He got up to see the girl standing before him, intense disgust and anger on her face. She snatched the fruits from the hands of the two Americans and hurled them away. It was evident from her manner that she considered such diet in the highest degree unclean and disgusting, also that she considered herself charged with the duty of superintending Tommy's and Dodd's education, but especially Dodd's. Taking him by the arm, she propelled him into the midst of the groping humans. She released him, stooped, and suddenly stood up, a shrimp about 18 inches long in her hand. Towering over Dodd by 6 inches, she took his face in her hands and began caressing him. Then, seizing his jaws in her strong fingers, she pried them apart and popped the tail end of the shrimp into his mouth. Dodd let out a yelp and spat out the love gift, to be rewarded with another box on the ear by the young Amazon, while Tommy stood by, convulsed with laughter, and yet in considerable trepidation, for fear of being forced to share Dodd's fate. For the girl was again holding out the tail end of the crustacean, and Jim Dodd's jaws were slowly and reluctantly approaching it. But suddenly there came an intervention as the strident rasping of beetle legs was heard in the distance. Panic seized the human herd, groveling for shrimps in the sandy soil with its tufts of red grasses. Milling in an uneasy mob, they cowered under the lashes of the antennae of the beetle guards, which sacrificed their backs through their hair garments whenever any of them tried to bolt. Nearer and nearer came the beetles, louder and more penetrating the shriek of their rasping legs. Now the swarm came into sight, rank after rank of the shell-clad monsters, leaping 15 feet at a bound with perfect precision, until they had formed a solid phalanx all around the humans. Tommy heard sighs of despair, he heard muttering, and then he realized with deep thankfulness that these human beings, degraded though they were, had a speech of their own. In the middle of the front line appeared a beetle a foot taller than the rest. That it was either a king or queen was evident from the respect paid it by the rest of the swarm. At its every movement, a bodyguard of beetles moved in unison, forming themselves in a group before it and on either side. There would have been something ludicrous about these movements, but for the impression of horror that the swarm made upon Tommy and Jim Dodd. Hitherto both had supposed that the hideous insects acted by blind instinct, but now there could no longer be any doubt that they were possessed of an organized intelligence. The strident sounds grew louder. Already Tommy was beginning to discover certain variations in them. It was dawning upon him that they formed a language, and a perfectly intelligible one. For, as the note changed about a half-semitone, 2 of the monsters left the side of their ruler and reached the 2 men with 3 successive leaps. Their movements left no doubt in either Tommy's or Dodd's mind what was required. The 2 strode hastily toward the assemblage and stopped as the antenna of their guards came down in menacing fashion. It was light enough for Tommy to see the face of the ruler of the hellish swarm, and it required all his powers of will to keep from collapsing from sheer horror at what he saw. For, despite the close-fitting shell, the face of the Beetle King was the face of a man. A white man. Jim Dodd's shriek rang out above the shrilling of the beetle's legs. Brom! It's you! It's you! My God, it's you, Brom! All right. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I wasn't expecting that. Well, you know, okay, I was not expecting that. I knew we would be bumping into Brom somewhere along the way. Because, you know, like his whole, I mean, there was no other, I mean, that was the only reason to introduce him earlier in the story in chapter 1. You know, the whole story about Brom was a bit of a genius, but no one liked him because he was always a, just not a very nice guy. And he had, and then he supposedly walked out in the middle of a snowstorm one night and never returned, and his body was never found. So yeah, there was definitely I knew he was going to be popping up. Being king of the Beatles, did not expect that. Did not expect that at all. That was good. Hey, Evilizer, how you doing? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Alrighty. So anyway, so we're going to continue with that story next week. That's right. That's right. If you want to see how that one turns out, that's actually going to be a 4-parter. It's going to be a 4-parter, that one. But in the meantime, we got a different kind of story. Bump this up to 100%. Oh no, that's not good. Fit to window. There, fit to window. There we go. I have to do it like that. Okay, we're going to get back to our stories in just a minute. It's already 3:30. So we've got one more short story. I was thinking we would be able to get in 2, but it looks like we'll probably only be able to get in 1. I think this is going to take... I don't know. We will see. We will see. We will see. But anyway, in the meantime, wow, there's a whole bunch of you in here. This is very cool. Very cool to see you all. And I know so some are like Lurky Lurk, they've come in with a couple of hosts too, and that's fine as well. For those who are here and have thrown down a host for the channel, thank you very much. Those are always greatly appreciated. I like those a lot. Yes, I do. And also, if you're enjoying the stream, you want to share it with your friends, there should be a share button somewhere on the screen there where you can share the stream to Twitter or Facebook. Let your friends know about it there. Give them a link to the stream. Maybe write a little bit about what you like about it. If you don't like it, I'm not this channel. I'm Ninja. But if you think this channel's awesome, this is Carrington TV. Yeah. Anyway, there's there we go. I got to get a change. I need to change the book title too. Let me just change it. Here we go. I'm gonna pull this up. It's the wrong one. Close that. No, don't save changes. This is... Oh. Where's my text? Is my text window. Here we go. By... There we go. This is going to be exciting. This is going to be good. Nice. Save. Down. There we go. I think this is going to be a good one. A study in... Oh, did I spell that right? An emerald? One second. Yeah, okay. Emerald. Yeah, there you go. Very good. We're going to get on with that one in just a minute. Just a minute. Let's see. I don't think there's any. I don't think there's no more news that's popped up. Oh yeah, I just wanted to mention as well, if you're one of my friends over on Twitch, YouTube, or Periscope, hey, yeah, our main stream is over here on Mixer. We read books quite regularly, Monday through Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, and then Sundays at 2 p.m. Pacific. Yeah, and we go for about 2.5 hours, something like that. Read books and chit chat and the like there, and yeah, sometimes we restream elsewhere, but usually, yeah, you can find us doing this and other stuff on Mixer, mixer.com/CarringtonTV. There we go. Just a little plug for my Mixer stream, because that's where we're at. Are we doing? Yes, we are. We are going to be doing that, Evilizer. After book club, once we're done with the short story, I'll be taking a short little break. We're going to come back with movie night, and then which is going to be a great comedy, Bob Hope comedy, my favorite brunette, and then yeah, we're going to move over to something. I don't know what yet. I don't know. I know I'm behind on Gears. That can be fun. I'm behind on Dead by Daylight. Maybe do those two there. It will mean switching over to 18 plus. Wouldn't mind getting a little more Neverwinter in either. That seemed pretty fun. All right, but anyway, we'll figure that out. But yeah, tomorrow's Monday. Monday's a big Halo night, so yeah, maybe get in on that. How much gigabytes is Black Desert Online? That was like 26, I think. Oh, no, hang on. Was it Black Desert? Yeah, it wasn't that big. And it wasn't that good either. That's what I tried last night, right? Yeah, I mean, it was okay. It was yeah, the character customization thing was hilarious. But your character doesn't. The character didn't resemble it too closely in the once you get away from the character creation screen. It was too actiony for me, if that makes any sense. It was too actiony. Rose is out of here. Okay, all right. Have a great night, Rose. Thank you for coming by. Thank you for spending the time with us. It's always good to see. It's always good to see you. We'll catch you tomorrow. Stay away from people. Wash them hands. What was the other game we played? We did Paladins. Yeah. Oh yeah, we played Paladins. Yeah. That's free. That's not too big either. I don't seem to recall. Oh yeah, but yeah, with that Black Desert, yeah, I've been I'm trying to find like a good like casual MMO to go on with. I mean, like I know everyone really likes playing Grand Theft Auto 5, but I just couldn't get into that. Yeah, I was looking at the, the kind of thing where you can get a group of people together and go on an adventure for a couple of hours and get all just finish like that and call it a day with like missions. And so I've been tried out Neverwinter, Fantasy Online, Fantasy Star Online, the Elder Scrolls, and last night was Black Desert. So of those all, so far Neverwinter has just seemed the most fun to me, at least, out of all of those. I still need to try, actually there's two I need to try. I need to try, I forgot what. Someone recommended Star Trek Online. Yeah, so I downloaded that as well. I'm definitely going to give that a try. I probably won't stick with that. Elder Scrolls. Yeah, last night was Black Desert, yeah. That was on the April 4th. Oh, Bless Unleashed. That's the other one I need to try as well. Bless Unleashed, and I've already installed that. And I know a lot of people were playing that, and I'm not sure, but a lot of it seemed to be sponsored kind of stuff. So they're promoting the heck out of it right now. Mr. Brotoad is back. Hey. New Apex update coming out in a few days. Okay, that'll be on Tuesday then, I imagine. That's when most updates happen. Yeah, they keep adding new stuff into that. Alrighty, okay, let's get into our next story. Next story. Evil Eyes says, have I ever tried GTA 5? Yeah, I have, yeah. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I'm just, believe it or not, I'm not all about that thug life. So, yeah, no, it just wasn't what I was looking for. I mean, I was looking for something more like EverQuesty. So, releasing Bloodhound's story. Ah, all right. Well, I'm sure they're gonna have more stuff in there. All right. But yeah, tonight, I don't know, we'll see about some Gears. We'll probably do some Bleeding Edge. Probably, I hope to get some Bleeding Edge and some Gears, maybe. Maybe some Dead by Daylight. I don't know. We'll figure it out. There we go. But let's do it. Let's get on. Well, I don't know. Not everyone would say that, lady. You can only buy them. That doesn't sound good. Okay, let's get on with them. Yeah. I'm very cozy. Yeah, it was rainy and chilly and overcast and the whole 9 yards. It was a little cold. Okay, certainly is cold, Star. How you doing? Okay, let's get on with our books here. Okay, so yeah, so we will finish the Beetle Horde. Sorry, we'll actually continue with that next week, next Sunday. Next Sunday we'll continue with that. In the meantime, though, here we go. Mr. Neil Gaiman has hooked us up with this, A Study in Emerald, and I mean, I have not read it, but took a quick glance at it. Looks like it might be some kind of parody or satire of the Sherlock Holmes story, A Study in Scarlet. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, I have Power Rangers Battle for the Grid there, Evilizer. Yeah, they added that to Game Pass a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it's pretty fun to fight in that. Although the people in matchmaking there, they just seem to be an awful lot of quitting going on mid-match. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, she's just keeping an eye out over there, Mr. Broketote. Okay, let's do it. Let's get started. A Study in Emerald, written by Neil Gaiman. Illustration and layout by Junie Koponon. 1. The New Friend. The Strand players, fresh from their stupendous European tour, where they performed before several of the crowned heads of Europe, garnering their plaudits and praise with magnificent dramatic performances, combining both comedy and tragedy. The Strand players wish to make it known that they shall be appearing at the Royal Court Theatre, Drury Lane, for a limited engagement in April, at which they will present My Look-alike Brother Tom, The Littlest Violet Seller, and The Great Old Ones Come. This last, an historical epic of pageantry and delight, each entire play in one act. Tickets are available now from the box office. It is the immensity, I believe. The hugeness of things below. The darkness of dreams. But I am wool-gathering. Forgive me, I am not a literary man. I had been in need of lodgings. That was how I met him. I wanted someone to share the cost of rooms with me. We were introduced by a mutual acquaintance in the chemical laboratories of St. Bart's. "You've been in Afghanistan, I perceive." That was what he said to me, and my mouth fell open and my eyes opened very wide. "Astonishing," I said. "Not really," said the stranger in the white lab coat, who was to become my friend. "From the way you hold your arm, I see you've been wounded, and in a particular way. You have a deep tan. You also have a military bearing, and there are few enough places in the Empire that a military man can be both tanned and, given the nature of the injury to your shoulder and the traditions of the Afghan cave folk, tortured." Put like that, of course, it was absurdly simple, but then it always was. I had been tanned nut brown, and I had, indeed, as he had observed, being tortured. Is up there, Yotsuba Dono? What's going on? The gods and men of Afghanistan were savages, unwilling to be ruled from Whitehall, or from Berlin, or even from Moscow, and unprepared to see reason. I had been sent into those hills, attached to the blank regiment. As long as the fighting remained in the hills and mountains, we fought on an equal footing. When the skirmishes descended into the caves and the darkness, then we found ourselves, as it were, out of our depth and in over our heads. I shall not forget the mirrored surface of the underground lake, nor the thing that emerged from the lake, its eyes opening and closing, and the singing whispers that accompanied it as it rose, wreathing their way about it like the buzzing of flies, bigger than worlds. That I survived was a miracle, but survive I did, and I returned to England with my nerves in shreds and tatters. The place that leech-like mouth had touched me was tattooed forever, frog-white, into the skin of my now withered shoulder. I had once been a crack shot. Now I had nothing, save a fear of the world beneath the world, akin to panic, which meant I would gladly pay 6pence of my army pension for a hansom cab, rather than a penny to travel underground. Still, the fogs and darknesses of London comforted me, took me in. I had lost my first lodgings because I screamed in the night. I had been in Afghanistan. I was there no longer. I scream in the night, I told him. I've been told that I snore, he said. Also, I keep irregular hours, and I often use the mantelpiece for target practice. I will need the sitting room to meet clients. I'm selfish, private, and easily bored. Will this be a problem? I smiled and shook my head, and extended my hand. We shook on it. The rooms he had found for us in Baker Street were more than adequate for 2 bachelors. I bore in mind all my friend had said about his desire for privacy, and I forbore from asking what it was he did for a living. Still, there was much to pique my curiosity. Visitors would arrive at all hours, and when they did, I would leave the sitting-room and repair to my bedroom, pondering what they could have in common with my friend. The pale woman with one eye bone white. The small man who looked like a commercial traveler, the portly dandy in his velvet jacket, and the rest. Some were frequent visitors, many others came only once, spoke to him and left, looking troubled or looking satisfied. Hey there, Borrowing Orange. How you doing, man? This is kind of like it's from the 1910 to 1940s. Oh, it sounds like it's set in the 1890s, because I think that's when Sherlock Holmes was set, wasn't it? It seems like it's like a bit of Sherlock Holmes parody, but not the funny kind. Some were frequent visitors. Many others came only once, spoke to him and left, looking troubled or looking satisfied. He was a mystery to me. We were partaking of one of our landlady's magnificent breakfasts one morning when my friend rang the bell to summon that good lady. "There will be gentlemen joining us in about 4 minutes," he said. "We will need another place at table." Very good," she said. "I'll put more sausages under the grill." My friend returned to perusing his morning paper. I waited for an explanation with growing impatience. "I don't understand. How could you know that in 4 minutes we would be receiving a visitor? There was no telegram, no message of any kind." He smiled thinly. You did not hear the clatter of a brougham several minutes ago. It slowed as it passed us, obviously as the driver identified our door. Then it sped up and went past, up into Marylebone Road. There's a crush of carriages and taxicabs letting off passengers at the railway station and at the waxworks, and it is in that crush that anyone wishing to alight without being observed will go. The walk from there to here is but 4 minutes." He glanced at his pocket watch, and as he did so I heard a tread on the stairs outside. "Come in, Lestrade," he called. "The door is ajar, and your sausages are just coming out from under the grill." A man I took to be Lestrade opened the door, then closed it carefully behind him. "I should not," he said, "but truth to tell, I've not had a chance to break my fast this morning, and I certainly could do justice to a few of those sausages." He was the small man I had observed on several occasions previously, whose demeanor was that of a traveler in rubber novelties or patent nostrums. My friend waited until our landlady had left the room before he said, "Obviously, I take this as a matter of national importance." Okay. "Obviously, I take it this is a matter of national importance." "Oh, my stars," said Lestrade, and he paled. "Surely the word cannot be out already. Tell me it's not." He began to pile his plate high with sausages, kipper fillets, and kedgeree and toast, but his hands shook a little. "Of course not," said my friend. "I know the squeak of your brougham wheels, though after all this time in oscillating G-sharp above high C. And if Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard cannot publicly be seen to come into the parlour of London's only consulting detective, yet comes anyway, and without having had his breakfast, then I know this is not a routine case. Ergo, it involves those above us and is a matter of national importance." Lestrade dabbed egg yolk from his chin with a napkin. I stared at him. He did not look like my idea of a police inspector, but then my friend looked little enough like my idea of a consulting detective, whatever that might be. "Perhaps we should discuss the matter privately," Lestrade said, glancing at me. My friend began to smile, impishly, and his head moved on his shoulders as it did when he was enjoying a private joke. "Nonsense," he said. "Two heads are better than one, and what is said to one of us is said to us both." "If I'm intruding," I said, gruffly, but he motioned me to silence. Lestrade shrugged. "It's the same to me," he said, after a moment. "If you solve the case, then I've done my job, and if you don't, then I have no job. You use your methods, that's what I say. I can't make anything worse." "If there's one thing a study of history has taught us, is that things can always get worse," said my friend. "When do we go to Shoreditch?" Lestrade dropped his fork. "Oh, this is too bad," he exclaimed. "Here you are, making sport of me when you know all about the matter. You should be ashamed." "No one has told me anything of the matter. When a police inspector walks into my room with fresh splashes of mud of that peculiar mustard yellow hue on his boots and trouser legs, I can surely be forgiven for presuming that he's been recently walking past the digs at Hobbs Lane in Shoreditch, which is the only place in London that particular mustard-coloured clay seems to be found." Inspector Lestrade looked embarrassed. "Now you put it like that," he said, "it seems so obvious." My friend pushed his plate away from him. "Of course it does," he said slightly testily. We rode to the East End in a cab. Inspector Lestrade had walked up to the Marylebone Road to find his brougham and left us. "So you are truly a consulting detective," I said. "The only one in London, or perhaps the world," said my friend. I do not take cases. Indeed, I consult. Others bring me their insoluble problems, they describe them, and sometimes I solve them. Then those people who come to you are, in the main, yes, police officers, or are detectives themselves, yes. It was a fine morning, but we were now jolting about the edges of the rookery of St. Giles, that warren of thieves and cutthroats which sits on London like a cancer on the face of a pretty flower-seller, and the only light to enter the cab was dim and faint. "Are you sure that you wish me along with you?" In reply, my friend stared at me without blinking. "I have a feeling," he said, "I have a feeling that we were meant to be together, that we have fought the good fight side by side in the past or in the future. I do not know. I am a rational man, but I have learned the value of a good companion, and from the moment I clapped eyes on you, I knew I trusted you as well as I do myself. Yes, I want you with me." I blushed or said something meaningless. For the first time since Afghanistan, I felt that I had a worth in the world. Victus Vitae, an electrical fluid. Do your limbs and nether regions lack life? Do you look back on the days of your youth with envy? Are the pleasures of the flesh now buried and forgot? Victus Vitae will bring life where life has long been lost. Even the oldest war horse can be a proud stallion once more. Bringing life to the dead, from an old family recipe and the best of modern science, to receive signed attestations of the efficacy of Victus Vitae, write to the V. von F. Company, 1B, Cheap Street, London. Little commercial. Alrighty. Anyway, interesting to have a couple of people over on Twitch right now. Get back to our story in just 1 second. That was the end of Chapter 1. I'm going to pop back into Chapter 2. Just one moment. Man. Oh, and for the benefit of our friends who are watching on either perhaps Twitch or YouTube or Periscope. Yeah. Our main stream is over on Mixer. Mixer.com/CarringtonTV. That's me. For the next couple of weeks, I'm restreaming out to other outlets, such as your Twitch, YouTube, and Periscope. And, but yeah, a mainstream with all the gaming and book reading and all kinds of stuff, yeah. It's over here on Mixer. That's where all the chat happens, all the social stuff happens. A lot of lurking happens. That's fine, too. It's fine, too. Let's get back to it. Chapter 2, The Room. Guys, I need to increase the text size here a bit, because it's kind of small. It was a cheap rooming house in Shoreditch. There was a policeman at the front door. Lestrade greeted him by name and made to usher us in, and I was ready to enter, but my friend squatted on the doorstep and pulled a magnifying glass from his coat pocket. He examined the mud on the wrought iron boot scraper, prodding at it with his forefinger. Only when he was satisfied would he let us go inside. We walked upstairs. The room in which the crime had been committed was obvious. It was flanked by 2 burly constables. Lestrade nodded to the men, and they stood aside. We walked in. I am not, as I said, a writer by profession, and I hesitate to describe that place, knowing that my words cannot do it justice. Still, I have begun this narrative, and I fear I must continue. A murder has been committed in that little bedsit. The body, what was left of it, was still there on the floor. I saw it, but at first, somehow, I did not see it. What I saw instead was what had sprayed and gushed from the throat and chest of the victim. In color, it ranged from bile green to grass green. It had soaked into the threadbare carpet and spattered the wallpaper. I imagined it for one moment the work of some hellish artist who had decided to create a study in emerald. After what seemed like 100 years, I looked down at the body, opened like a rabbit on a butcher's slab, and tried to make sense of what I saw. I removed my hat, and my friend did the same. He knelt and inspected the body, inspecting the cuts and gashes. Then he pulled out his magnifying glass and walked over to the wall, examining the gouts of drying ichor. "We've already done that," said Inspector Lestrade. "Indeed," said my friend. "Then what did you make of this, then? I do believe it's a word." Lestrade walked to the place my friend was standing and looked up. There was a word written in capitals in green blood on the faded yellow wallpaper some little way above Lestrade's head. "R-A-C-H-E," said Lestrade, spelling it out. Obviously he was going to write Rachel, but he was interrupted. "So, we must look for a woman." My friend said nothing. He walked back to the corpse and picked up its hands, one after the other. The fingertips were clean of ichor. "I think we have established that the word was not written by His Royal Highness." "What the devil makes you say that?" "My dear Lestrade, please give me some credit for having a brain. The corpse is obviously not that of a man. The color of his blood, the number of limbs, the eyes, the position of the face, all these things bespeak the blood royal. Well, I cannot say which royal line. I would hazard that he is an heir, perhaps. No, second to the throne, in one of the German principalities." "That's amazing." Lestrade hesitated. Then he said, "This is Prince Franz Drago of Bohemia. He was in here in Albion as a guest of Her Majesty Victoria. Here's a holiday and a change of air." "For the theatres, the whores and gaming tables, you mean?" "Oh, if you say so." Lestrade looked put out. "Anyway, you've given us a fine lead with this Rachel woman, although I don't doubt we would have found her on our own." "Doubtless," said my friend. He inspected the room further, commented acidly several times that the police with their boots had obscured footprints, and moved things that might have been of use to anyone attempting to reconstruct the events of the previous night. "Yes, it is very small there, Chris. But I can't make it too large, because otherwise I have to be scrolling up and down as well as going side to side." Still, he seemed interested in a small patch of mud he found behind the door. Beside the fireplace he found what appeared to be some ash or dirt. "Did you see this?" he asked Lestrade. "Her Majesty's police," said Lestrade, "tend not to be excited by ash in a fireplace. That's where ash tends to be found." And he chuckled at that. My friend took a pinch of the ash and rubbed between his fingers, then sniffed the remains. Finally, he scooped up what was left of the material and tipped it into a glass vial, which he stoppered and placed in an inner pocket of his coat. He stood up. "And the body?" "The police will send their own people," Lestrade said. My friend nodded at me, and together we walked to the door. My friend sighed. "Inspector, your quest for Miss Rachel may prove fruitless. Among other things, Rache is a German word. It means revenge. Check your dictionary. There are other meanings." We reached the bottom of the stair and walked out onto the street. "You've never seen royalty before this morning, have you?" he asked. I shook my head. "Well, the sight can be unnerving if you're unprepared. Why, my good fellow, you are trembling." "Forgive me, I shall be fine in moments." "Would it do you good to walk?" he asked. and I assented, certain that if I did not walk, then I would begin to scream. "West, then," said my friend, pointing to the dark tower of the palace. And we commenced to walk. "So," said my friend after some time, "you've never had any personal encounters with any of the crowned heads of Europe?" "No," I said. "I believe I can confidently state that you shall," he told me, "and not with a corpse this time, very soon." "My dear fellow, whatever makes you believe—" In reply, he pointed to a carriage, black-painted, that had pulled up 50 yards ahead of us. A man in a black top hat and a greatcoat stood by the door, holding it open, waiting silently. A coat of arms familiar to every child in Albion was painted in gold upon the carriage door. "There are invitations one does not refuse," said my friend. He doffed his own hat to the footman, and I do believe that he was smiling as he climbed into the box-like space and relaxed back into the soft leathery cushions. When I attempted to speak with him during the journey to the palace, he placed his finger over his lips. Then he closed his eyes and seemed sunk in thought. I, for my part, tried to remember what I knew of German royalty, but apart from the Queen's consort, Prince Albert, being German, I knew little enough. Hello there, Simply Red. How are you doing? I put a hand in my pocket, pulled out a handful of coins, brown and silver, black and copper green. I stared at the portrait stamped on each of them of our Queen, and felt both patriotic pride and stark dread. I told myself I had once been a military man and a stranger to fear, and I could remember a time when this had been the plain truth. For a moment I remembered when I had been a crack shot, even, I liked to think, something of a marksman. But my right hand shook as if it were palsied, and the coins jingled and chinked, and I felt only regret. This gif is you in the moment? Uh-oh. What are you looking like there, Evilizer? Working from home. Working very diligently from home. Alrighty. That at least you are being productive. It seems you are being productive. You are lucky to be able to work from home. All right. At long last, Dr. Henry Jekyll is proud to announce the general release of the world-renowned Jekyll's Powders for popular consumption. No longer the province of the privileged few, release the inner you for inner and outer cleanliness. Too many people, both men and women, suffer from constipation of the soul. Relief is immediate and cheap with Jekyll's Powders, available in vanilla and original mentholatum formulations. Before and after. Dr. Jekyll. That's a book that we need to do. Yeah, Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You're gaming from home. All right. That's fun too. That's fun too. Oh, Devil's Fist and Grizzly Adams hooking us up with them hosts. Thank you, guys. Guys and gals. Chapter 3. The Palace. The Queen's consort, Prince Albert, was a big man with an impressive handlebar moustache and a receding hairline. And he was undeniably and entirely human. He met us in the corridor, nodded to my friend and to me, did not ask us for our names or offer to shake any hands. "The Queen is most upset," he said. He had an accent. He pronounced his S's as Z's. Most upset. Franz was one of her favorites. She has so many nephews, but he made her laugh so. You will find the ones who did this to him." "I will do my best," said my friend. "I have read your monographs," said Prince Albert. "It was I who told them you should be consulted. I hope I did right." "As do I," said my friend. And then the great door was opened, and we were ushered into the darkness and the presence of the Queen. She was called Victoria because she had beaten us in battle 700 years before, and she was called Gloriana because she was glorious, and she was called the Queen because the human mouth was not shaped to say her true name. She was huge, huger than I had imagined possible, and she squatted in the shadows, staring down at us without moving. "This must be solved," the words came from the shadows. "Indeed, ma'am," said my friend. A limb squirmed and pointed at me. "Step forward." I think this is supposed to be the Queen saying this. I thought it was still Prince Albert. "Step forward." I wanted to walk. My legs would not move. My friend came to my rescue then. He took me by the elbow and walked me toward Her Majesty. "Is not to be afraid, is to be worthy, is to be a companion." That was what she said to me. Her voice was a very sweet contralto, with a distant buzz. Then the limb uncoiled and extended, and she touched my shoulder. There was a moment, but only a moment, of a pain deeper and more profound than anything I have ever experienced, and then it was replaced by a pervasive sense of well-being. I could feel the muscles in my shoulder relax, and for the first time since Afghanistan, I was free from pain. Then my friend walked forward. Victoria spoke to him, yet I could not hear her words. I wondered if they went somehow directly from her mind to his, if this was the Queen's counsel I had read about in the histories. He repeated aloud, "Certainly, ma'am. I could tell you there were 2 other men with your nephew in that room in Shoreditch that night. The footprints were, although obscured, unmistakable." And then, "Yes, I understand. I believe so. Yes." He was quiet when we left the palace, and said nothing to me as we rode back to Baker Street. It was dark already. I wondered how long we had spent in the palace. Fingers of sooty fog twined across the road and the sky. Upon our return to Baker Street, in the looking-glass of my room, I observed that the frog-white skin across my shoulder had taken on a pinkish tinge. I hoped I was not imagining it, that it was not merely the moonlight through the shadow. A velociraptor. Liver complaints, bilious attacks, neurasthenic disturbances, quinsy, arthritis. These are just a handful of the complaints for which a professional exsanguination can be the remedy. In our offices we have sheaves of testimonials which can be inspected by the public at any time. Do not put your health in the hands of amateurs. We have been doing this for a very long time. V. Tepes, professional exsanguinator. Remember, it's pronounced Zeppish. Romania, Paris, London, Whitby. You've tried the rest. Now try the best. V. Tepes. Exsanguination. That's I'm pretty sure that means bloodletting. Bloodletting. Good times. Good times. Okay, so this is a kind of a weird, it is a kind of a weird story. All right. That my friend was a master of this is chapter 4, the performance. That my friend was a master of disguise should have come as no surprise to me, yet surprise me it did. Over the next 10 days, a strange assortment of characters came in through our door in Baker Street. An elderly Chinese man, a young roué, a fat, red-haired woman of whose former profession there could be little doubt, and a venerable old buffer, his foot swollen and damaged from gout. Each of them would walk into my friend's room, and with a speed that would have done justice to a music-hall quick-change artist, my friend would walk out. He would not talk about what he had been doing on these occasions, preferring to relax, staring off into space, occasionally making notations on any scrap of paper to hand. Notations I found, frankly, incomprehensible. He seemed entirely preoccupied, so much so that I found myself worrying about his well-being. And then, late one afternoon, he came home dressed in his own clothes, with an easy grin upon his face, and he asked if I was interested in the theatre. As much as the next man, I told him. Then fetch your opera glasses, he told me. We're off to Drury Lane. I had expected a light opera, or something of the kind, but instead I found myself in what must have been the worst theatre in Drury Lane, for all that it had named itself after the royal court. And to be honest, it was barely in Drury Lane at all, being situated at the Shaftesbury Avenue end of the road, where the avenue approaches the Rookery of St. Giles. On my friend's advice, I concealed my wallet, and following his example, I carried a stout stick. Once we were seated in the stalls, I had bought a threepenny orange from one of the lovely young women who sold them to the members of the audience, and I sucked it as we waited. My friend said quietly, "You should only count yourself lucky that you did not need to accompany me to the gambling dens or the brothels, or the madhouses, another place that Prince France delighted in visiting, as I have learned, but there was nowhere he went to more than once, nowhere but—" The orchestra struck up, and the curtain was raised. My friend was silent. It was a fine enough show in its way. 3 one-act plays were performed. Comic songs were sung between the acts. The leading man was tall, languid, and had a fine singing voice. The leading lady was elegant, and her voice carried through all the theatre. The comedian had a fine touch for patter songs. The first play was a broad comedy of mistaken identities. The leading man played a pair of identical twins who had never met, but had managed, by a set of comical adventures, each to find himself engaged to be married to the same young lady, who amusingly thought herself engaged to only one man. Doors swung open and closed as the actors changed from identity to identity. The second play was a heartbreaking tale of an orphan girl who starved in the snow selling hothouse violets. Her grandmother recognized her at the last and swore that she was the babe stolen 10 years ago by bandits. But it was too late, and the frozen little angel breathed her last. I must confess I found myself wiping my eyes with my linen handkerchief more than once. The performance finished with a rousing historical narrative. The entire company played the men and women of a village on the shore of the ocean 700 years before our modern times. They saw shapes rising from the sea in the distance. The hero joyously proclaimed to the villagers that these were the old ones, whose coming was foretold, returning to us from R'lyeh, and from dim Carcosa, and from the plains of Leng, where they had slept, or waited, or passed out the time of their death. The comedian opined that the other villagers had all been eating too many pies and drinking too much ale, and they were imagining the shapes. A portly gentleman, playing a priest of the Roman god, tells the villagers that the shapes in the sea were monsters and demons and must be destroyed. At the climax, the hero beat the prisoner to death with his own crucifer and prepared to welcome them as they came. The heroine sang a haunting aria, whilst in an astonishing display of magic lantern trickery it seemed as if we saw their shadows cross the sky at the back of the stage. The Queen of Albion herself, and the Black One of Egypt, in shape almost like a man, followed by the ancient goat, parent to 1,000, emperor of all China, and the Tsar unanswerable, and he who presides over the New World, and the White Lady of the Antarctic fastness, and the others. And as each shadow crossed the stage, or appeared to, from out of every throat in the gallery came unbidden a mighty huzzah, until the air itself seemed to vibrate. The moon rose in the painted sky, and then at its height, in one final moment of theatrical magic, it turned from a pallid yellow, as it was in the old tales, to the comforting crimson of the moon that shines down upon us all today. The members of the cast took their bows and their curtain calls, to cheers and laughter, and the curtain fell for the last time, and the show was done. "There," said my friend. "What did you think?" "Oh, jolly good," I told him, my hands sore from applauding. "A stout fellow," he said, with a smile. "Let us go backstage." Yeah, by the way, that's, who wrote about Carcosa? I don't know, but anyway, that thing that they're talking about, the old ones coming up from Relay. Relay is that's the sunken city where Cthulhu lies dreaming in Relay, waiting to be summoned again from his cult here. This is a weird story, and I think Carcosa. I'm not sure if that was Lovecraft again, or if that was. Well, I know we've read stories about Carcosa. I think it might have been a Lord Dunsany thing. Maybe. But no, this is like some weird alternate version of Sherlock Holmes. I mean, they haven't said it's Sherlock Holmes, but obviously it's a parody of that there, Sherlock Holmes and Watson. And then they start talking about so I guess it's some alternate dimension there. The moon rose in the painted sky, and then at its height, in one final moment of theatrical magic, it turned from a pallid yellow, as it was in the old tales, to the comforting crimson of the moon that shines down upon us all today. So I guess someone in this universe, someone has actually summoned... that kind of explains why all the royalty are all these like weird exploded insect creatures. Yeah, this is weird stuff. It's kind of cool though, right? We walked outside and into an alley beside the theater, to the stage door, where a thin woman with a wen on her cheek knitted busily. My friend showed her a visiting card, and she directed us into the building and up some steps to a small communal dressing room. Oil lamps and candles gutted in front of smeared looking-glasses, and men and women were taking off their makeup and costumes with no regard to the proprieties of gender. I averted my eyes. My friend seemed unperturbed. "Might I talk to Mr. Verney?" he asked loudly. A young woman who had played the heroine's best friend in the first play, and the saucy innkeeper's daughter in the last, pointed us to the end of the room. Sherry Verney," she called. The young man who stood up in response was lean, less conventionally handsome than he had seemed from the other side of the footlights. He peered at us quizzically. "I do not believe I've had the pleasure." "My name is Henry Camberley," said my friend, drawling his speech somewhat. "You may have heard of me." "I must confess I have not had that privilege," said Verney. My friend presented the actor with an engraved card. The man looked at the card with unfeigned interest. "Oh, a theatrical promoter from the New World. My. And this is—" He looked at me. "This is a friend of mine, Mr. Sebastian. He is not of the profession." I muttered something about having enjoyed the performance immensely and shook hands with the actor. My friend said, "Have you ever visited the New World?" "Oh, I have not yet had that honor," admitted Vernet, "although it always has been my dearest wish." "Well, my good man," said my friend, with the easy informality of a New Worlder, "maybe you'll get your wish. That last play, I've never seen anything like it. Did you write it?" "Oh, alas, no. The playwright is a good friend of mine, although I devised the mechanism of the Magic Lantern Shadow Show. You'll not see finer on the stage today." "Would you give me the playwright's name? Perhaps I should speak to him directly, this friend of yours." Vernet shook his head. "Oh, that will not be possible, I'm afraid. He is a professional man and does not wish his connection with the stage publicly to be known." "I see." My friend pulled a pipe from his pocket and put it in his mouth. Then he patted his pockets. "Oh, I am sorry," he began. "I've forgotten to bring my tobacco pouch." "I smoke a strong black shag," said the actor, "but if you have no objection—" "Oh, none," said my friend heartily. "Why, I smoke a strong shag myself." And he filled his pipe with the actor's tobacco, and the two men puffed away, while my friend described a vision he had for a play that could tour the cities of the New World, from Manhattan Island all the way to the furthest tip of the continent in the distant South. The first act would be the last play we had seen. The rest of the play might perhaps tell of the dominion of the Old Ones over humanity and its gods, perhaps telling what might have happened if people had had no royal families to look up to. A world of barbarism and darkness. "But your mysterious professional man would be the play's author, and what occurs would be alone his to decide," interjected my friend. "Our drama would be his, but I can guarantee you audiences beyond your imaginings, and a significant share of the takings at the door. Let us say 50%. "This is most exciting," said Vernet. "I hope it will not turn out to have been a pipe dream." "No, sir, it shall not," said my friend, puffing on his own pipe, chuckling at the man's joke. "Come to my rooms in Baker Street tomorrow morning, after breakfast time, say at 10, in company with your author friend, and I shall have the contracts drawn up and waiting." With that, the actor clambered up to his chair and clapped his hands for silence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the company, I have an announcement to make," he said, his resonant voice filling the room. "This gentleman here is Henry Camberley, the theatrical promoter, and he's proposing to take us across the Atlantic Ocean and on to fame and fortune." There were several cheers, and the comedian said, "Well, it'll make a change from herrings and pickled cabbage," and the company laughed. And it was to smiles of all of them that we walked out of the theatre and out onto the fog-wreathed streets. "My dear fellow," I said, "whatever was—" "Not another word," said my friend. "There are many ears in the city." "Yeah, the ads are good there, Chris." And not another word was spoken until we had hailed a cab and clambered inside and were rattling up the Charing Cross Road. And even then, before he said anything, my friend took his pipe from his mouth and emptied the half-smoked contents of the bowl into a small tin. He pressed the lid onto the tin and placed it into his pocket. "There," he said, "that's the tall man found, or I'm a Dutchman. Now, we just have to hope that the cupidity and the curiosity of the limping doctor proves enough to bring him to us tomorrow morning." "The limping doctor?" My friend snorted. "That is what I have been calling him. It was obvious from footprints and much else besides, when we saw the prince's body, that two men had been in that room that night, a tall man, who, unless I miss my guess, we have just encountered, and a smaller man with a limp, who eviscerated the prince with a professional skill that betrays the medical man." "A doctor?" "Indeed. I hate to say this, but it is my experience that when a doctor goes to the bad, he is a fouler and darker creature than the worst cutthroat. There was Houston, the acid bath man, and Campbell, who brought the procrustation bed to Ealing, and he carried on in a similar vein for the rest of our journey. The cabin pulled up beside the curb. "Oh, that'll be 1 and 10pence," said the cabby. My friend tossed him a florin, which he caught and tipped to his ragged tall hat. "Much obliged to you both," he called out as the horse clopped out into the fog. We walked to our front door. As I unlocked the door, my friend said, "Odd, our cabby just ignored that fellow on the corner." "Well, they do that at the end of a shift," I pointed out. "Indeed they do," said my friend. I dreamed of shadows that night, vast shadows that blotted out the sun, and I called out to them in my desperation. But they did not listen. Ooh, this is weird. This is weird in a good way, very good way. I like it. This year, step into the spring, with a spring in your step. Jack's boots, shoes, and brogues. Save your souls. Heels our specialty. Jack's. And do not forget to visit our new clothes and fittings emporium in the East, featuring evening wear of all kinds. Hats, novelties, canes, sword sticks, etc. Jack's of Piccadilly. It's all in the spring. This commercial brought to you by A Study in Emerald. Chapter 5, The Skin and the Pit. Oh. Yeah. Do you ever see The Avengers, the British spy thing on TV? Patrick Macnee as I don't remember his name. He had Emma Peel. She was like the she was like she wasn't the first lady that they had on the show. Right. Anyway, Patrick Macnee, he had a sword stick. Chapter 5, The Skin and the Pit. Inspector Lestrade was the first to arrive. "You have posted your men in the street?" asked my friend. "I have," said Lestrade, "with strict orders to let anyone who comes—" "I have," said Lestrade, "with strict orders to let anyone in who comes, but to arrest anyone trying to leave." "And you have handcuffs with you?" In reply, Lestrade put his hands in his pocket and jangled 2 pairs of cuffs grimly. Now, sir," he said, "while we wait, why do you not tell me what we're waiting for?" My friend pulled his pipe out of his pocket. He did not put it in his mouth, but placed it on the table in front of him. Then he took the tin from the night before, and a glass vial I recognized as the one he had in the room in Shoreditch. "There," he said, "the coffin nail, as I trust it shall prove, for our Master Vernet." He paused. Then he took out his pocket watch, laid it carefully on the table. "We have several minutes before they arrive." He turned to me. "What do you know of the Restorationists?" "Not a blessed thing," I told him. Lestrade coughed. "If you're talking about what I think you're talking about," he said, "perhaps we should leave it there. Enough's enough." "Too late for that," said my friend. "For there are those who do not believe that the coming of the Old Ones was the fine thing we all know it to be. Anarchists to a man. They would see the old ways restored, mankind in control of its own destiny, if you will." "I will not hear this sedition spoken," said Lestrade. "I must warn you." "I must warn you not to be such a fathead," said my friend, "because it was Restorationists that killed Prince Franz Drago." They murder, they kill, in a vain effort to force our masters to leave us alone in the darkness. The prince was killed by a rushet. It's an old term for a hunting dog, Inspector, as you would know if you had looked it up in a dictionary. It also means revenge, and the hunter left his signature on the wallpaper in the murder room, just as an artist might sign a canvas, but he was not the one who killed the prince." "The limping doctor," I exclaimed. "Very good. There was a tall man there that night. I could tell his height, for the word was written at eye level. He smoked a pipe, the ash and dottle sat unburnt in the fireplace, and he had tapped out his pipe with ease on the mantel, something a smaller man would not have done. The tobacco was an unusual blend of shag. The footprints in the room had, for the most part, been almost obliterated by your men, but there were several clear prints behind the door and by the window. Someone had waited there, a smaller man from his stride, who put his weight on his right leg. On the path outside I had several clear prints, and the different colors of clay on the boot scraper outside gave me more information. A tall man, who had accompanied the prince into those rooms, and had later walked out. Waiting for them to arrive was the man who sliced up the prince so impressively." Lestrade made an uncomfortable noise that did not quite become a word. "I have spent many days retracing the movements of His Highness. I went from gambling hell to brothel to dining den to madhouse, looking for our pipe-smoking man and his friend. I made no progress until I thought to check the newspapers of Bohemia, searching for a clue to the prince's recent activities there, and in them I learned that an English theatrical troupe had been in Prague last month and had performed before Prince Franz Drago." "Ah, wow. How's our friend there on Twitch doing? How you doing?" "Good Lord," I said. "So that Sherry Vernay fellow is a restorationist, exactly." I was shaking my head in wonder at my friend's intelligence and skills of observation when there was a knock on the door. "This will be our quarry," said my friend. "Careful now." Lestrade put his hand deep into his pocket, where I had no doubt he kept a pistol. He swallowed nervously. My friend called out, "Please come in." The door opened. It was not Vernay, nor was it a limping doctor. It was one of the young street Arabs who earn a crust running errands, in the employ of Monsieurs Street and Walker, as we used to say when I was young. "A Playfair," he said. "Is there a Mr. Henry Camberley here? I was asked by a gentleman to deliver a note." "I'm he," said my friend. "And for a sixpence what can you tell me about the gentleman who gave you this note?" The young lad, who volunteered that his name was Wiggins, bit the sixpence before making it vanish, and then told us that the Cherry Cove who gave him the note was on the tall side, with dark hair, and he added he had been smoking a pipe. I have the note here, and take the liberty of transcribing it. "My dear sir, I do not address you as Henry Camberley, for it is a name to which you have no claim. I am surprised that you did not announce yourself under your own name, for it is a fine one, and one that does you credit. I have read a number of your papers, when I have been able to obtain them. Indeed, I corresponded with you quite profitably 2 years ago about certain theoretical anomalies in your paper on the dynamics of an asteroid. I was amused to meet you yesterday evening. A few tips which might have saved you bother in times to come in the profession you currently follow. Firstly, a pipe-smoking man might possibly have a brand-new, unused pipe in his pocket and no tobacco, but it is exceedingly unlikely, at least as unlikely as a theatrical promoter with no idea of the usual customs of recompense on a tour, who is accompanied by a taciturn ex-army officer, Afghanistan, unless I miss my guess. Incidentally, while you are correct that the streets of London have ears, it might also behoove you in future not to take the first cab that comes along. Cab drivers have ears too, if they choose to use them. You are certainly correct in one of your suppositions. It was indeed I who lured the half-blood creature back to the room in Shoreditch. If it's any comfort to you, having learned a little of his recreational predilections, I had told him I had procured for him a girl, abducted from a convent in Cornwall, where she had never seen a man, and that it would only take his touch and the sight of his face to tip her over into a perfect madness. Had she existed, he would have feasted on her madness while he took her, like a man sucking the flesh from a ripe peach, leaving nothing behind but the skin and the pit. I've seen them do this. I've seen them do far worse. And it is not the great price we pay for peace and prosperity. It is too great a price for that. The good doctor, who believes as I do, and who did indeed write our little performance, for he has some crowd-pleasing skills, was waiting for us with his knives. I send this note, not as a catch-me-if-you-can taunt, for we are gone, the estimable doctor and I, and you shall not find us, but to tell you that it was good to feel that, if only for a moment, I had a worthy adversary, worthier by far than inhuman creatures from beyond the pit. I fear the Strand players will need to find themselves a new leading man. I will not sign myself Verney, and until the hunt is done and the world restored, I beg you to think of me simply as Rushay. Nyarlathotep, that was written by H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah. Ba-ba-da. Nyarlathotep. Oh no, Kurdamad says I'm a nerd. Oh no! My feelings! Oh no! Oh! Inspector Lestrade ran from the room, calling to his men. They made young Wiggins take them to the place where the man had given him the note, for all the world as if Verney the actor would be waiting there for them, a-smoking of his pipe. And from the window we watched them run, my friend and I, and we shook our heads. They will stop and search all the trains leaving London, all the ships leaving Albion for Europe or the New World, said my friend, looking for a tall man and his companion, a smaller, thick-set medical man with a slight limp. They will close the ports. Every way out of the country will be blocked. Do you think they will catch him then? My friend shook his head. I may be wrong, he said, but I would wager that he and his friend are even now only a mile or so away, in the rookery of St. Giles, where the police will not go, except by the dozen. And they will hide up there until the hue and cry have died away, and then they will be about their business. What makes you say that? Because, said my friend, if our positions were reversed, it's what I would do. You should burn the note, by the way. I frowned. But surely it's evidence, I said. It's seditionary nonsense, said my friend. And I should have burned it. Indeed, I told Lestrade I had burned it when he returned, and he congratulated me on my good sense. Lestrade kept his job, and Prince Albert wrote a note to my friend congratulating him on his deductions while regretting that the perpetrator was still at large. They have not yet caught Sherry Verney, or whatever his name really is, nor was any trace of his murderous accomplice, tentatively identified as a former military surgeon named John, or perhaps James, Watson. Curiously, it was revealed that he had also been in Afghanistan. I wonder if we ever met. My shoulder, touched by the Queen, continues to improve. The flesh fills and it heals. Soon I shall be a dead shot once more. One night when we were alone, several months ago, I asked my friend if he remembered the correspondence referred to in the letter from the man who signed himself Rushay. My friend said that he remembered it well, and that Sigurdsson, for so the actor had called himself then, claiming to be an Icelander, had been inspired by an equation of my friend's to suggest some wild theories furthering the relationship between mass, energy, and the hypothetical speed of light. "Oh, nonsense, of course," said my friend without smiling, "but inspired and dangerous nonsense nonetheless." The palace eventually sent word that the Queen was pleased with my friend's accomplishment in the case, and there the matter rested. I doubt my friend will leave it alone, though. It will not be over until one of them has killed the other. I kept the note. I have said things in this retelling of events that are not to be said. If I were a sensible man, I would burn all these pages. But then, as my friend taught me, even ashes can give up their secrets. Instead, I shall place these papers in a strong box at my bank, with instructions that the box may not be opened until long after anyone now living is dead. Although in the light of the recent events in Russia, I fear that day may be closer than any of us would care to think. S.M. Major, retired, Baker Street, London, New Albion, 1881. So that is, okay. Okay, so, the assumption was, and I was kind of thinking about it. I was kind of thinking about it through this. They've been naming everyone, like Lestrade and, Scotland Yard, but they made it they went to great pains not to identify, the doctor and his friend as being, Sherlock Holmes and Watson. And here, right on the very last page, the letter is signed by, it is, the letter being the confession there of the two murderers on the lam, one of them being a James Watson, or so the doctor, and the other one, the sheriff. I imagine that must be. They have not caught Sherry Vernay. That's got to be Sherlock Holmes there. And I'm going to look up what Moriarty's first name is. Wiki Moriarty, because I think that's supposed to be Moriarty being the bad guy right at the end. What's his first name? Professor James Moriarty. It was James Moriarty. Okay. I know. So maybe the implication there is that it's the other way around. So that's all I can imagine why, because they went to great trouble to not say Sherlock and Holmes for the. There we go. I started up the wrong one for that thing there. So that was kind of weird. That was kind of weird. Better Letter says you can listen to this book while completing your online schoolwork. Yeah. Well, we've just finished though. We've just finished for the day. Just finished. Yeah. But here's the scoop. Here is the scoop for those who are. Where are we at? Orgon loves sending those just rivers of smiley faces into that thing. I was going to say, so that's the end of Short Story Sunday. So that was okay. That was pretty good. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. We started off with it's first of a multi-part series, the Beetle Horde. A big giant insect invasion down in the Hollow Earth, by Victor Rousseau. We're going to continue that next week, and then we had that short story by Neil Gaiman, who's very generously letting people read his short stories, which is very cool. So I'm already almost went over by almost an hour tonight, but I'm going to be back in 1 hour and 10 minutes. 1 hour and 10 minutes. We're going to read. We're going to be having movie night, public domain movie, My Favorite Brunette with Bob Hope and what's her face. Yeah, that should be just pretty good. Should be a lot of great fun. A lot of great fun. And then we're going to get into some gaming as well. So that will be good. Yeah, it's I forgot it. Here we go. One second. Here we go. Wiki, my favorite brew net. This one here. Copy. Let's paste that into chat real fast. That's what we're going to be watching. So it'll be good. Yeah. So we'll get that, and then we'll get some gaming in after that. Might do a little Dead by Daylight, maybe some Gears. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But then again, I don't like going from a family-friendly thing into an 18+ game either. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Yeah. But anyway, that's the end of book club for right now. Yeah. 1947 movie that fell into the public domain. Yep. There were several movies and lots of books and magazines, which because back then your copyrights would last for a certain amount of time, and they kept expanding it. But when it got to the end of it, there was a one-time renewal that you could do, and a lot of places goofed up the paperwork. Yeah, well, I'm not going to throw a Harry Potter movie up there. Oh, no, that ain't even an old movie. You should, yeah, we've been doing all kinds of old stuff. We've done stuff from like the 1920s. Actually, I think 1917 with, 1917, we were watching, that's Les Vampires. That was like a big multi-part series. That wouldn't be, yeah. That was very good. It was very good. I forget how it ended though. But yeah, last week we did His Girl Friday. That was another 1940s one, I think. Oh, maybe it was 1930. Yeah, all kinds of good stuff. It's going to be good. Abbott and Costello. Yeah, there's some Abbott and Costello in the public domain. Yeah. Probably get to that at some point, but yeah, we're just gonna have a good time with the movie. We did Nosferatu and the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Yeah, did both of those. Yeah. Yeah, we've been we're watching some good stuff. Oh, and Cosmos, War of the Planets. That, man, weird. But that's it. I am out of here. You guys have a great night. I'm back in 1 hour and 10 minutes. We're going to have movie night, then gaming. Thank you all for coming on in. Thank you, Orgon, once again. Oh, let's roll some credits. Let's do that. And take a little peek at what's going on. Thank you, Mr. Neil Gaiman. Thank you, Mr. Neil Gaiman, for that short story there. A Study in Emerald. Kind of a weird little take. It's like an alternate universe where Sherlock Holmes and that whole environment grew up in the after the old ones have come and conquered the earth. That's right. That's right. Yeah, let's roll these bad boys. Take a little look at what was going on. Boop. There we go. There it comes. Bum bum bum. Okay, well, there we go. Because you are the best. You are the best. Top chatters, Chris Alberti, top of the list. Good lord, Chris Alberti, right on up there. He was also doing some awesome retweeting earlier too. SoCal Aussie, nice. Mr. Broat Toad, Rose, who she had to leave a little earlier. Evilizer, getting in there. Halo Collector, Tillable Cat, Oregon Kills Evil. He was and Miss Taco Bella. Oregon's gone crazy with them emojis. Lady Death and Shadowtronics, thank you for your fine mod work. Thank you very much. Oregon Kills Evil. Going to town with some embers there. I do appreciate that. That's very, very generous of you. Thank you, Oregon. Tillable Cat, leading the way with the whole bunch of sparkages coming down. Man, those sparks. And there we go. I know something has to be wrong with the sticker counts, because I know more of them got used than that. Those 28 smiley faces of my smiley mug there, that was almost all from Oregon. New followers, Diablo and Kid you mad. Are you got a follow from them? He calls me a nerd and then throws down a follow anyway? Okay, I'll take it. Sure, why not? Sounds good to me. But that's it. That is our stream. Back in 1 hour and 1 hour and 7 minutes now. And we'll catch you later there. Good to see you later, SoCal Aussie, Borrowing Orange, Lady Death, Shadowtronics, Evilizer, Chris Alberti. Did I say Tillable Cat? I think so. And Better Lettuce, yeah. Okay. Well, and Better Lettuce, yeah, if you need something to listen to during the week, Monday through Thursday, we have book club at 10 a.m. Pacific, which is 1 p.m. Eastern. And we're working our way through this murder mystery here, Whose Body by Dorothy Sayers. So yeah, we've got a whole bunch of that coming up, Okay, we'll see ya.